Welcome to Raging Bullets, a DC Comics fan podcast, episode 411. Welcome to Raging Bullets. I'm Sean Whalen, drnorge, and I'm joined as always by my co-host Jim. I'm going to regret defining what a whatnot is. So says the sensei of the whatnot, Segulin, and the Duke of You-Know.
How's it going,
On this episode, we are going to talk about Arkham Manor #1, Lobo #1, Klarion #1, Deathstroke #1, and Trinity of Sin #1. We also chat about DC's Convergence events that's upcoming, what we think about the event, any speculation we have, how we like events like this in general. It's going to be, they're taking 2 months off to do this event, how we feel about that concept. So we're going to have that as a big discussion. We have some great listener voicemails where we're joined by Brandon and longtime friend of the show, Peter Rios, to talk about television and where that's going. And then we do a spoilery television segment where we talk about Constantine and Arrow and some of the things that are going on in Flash and things up to present day. And this is actually August 8th when I'm not August 8th, I'm sorry. No, I'm in my own kind of multiverse time stream. This is November 8th that we're recording this, and the reason why I'm letting you know that when you get to that spoilery television segment, if you aren't caught up, you're going to want to skip that until we get to that point. We are proud members of the Comics Podcast Network, the League of Comic Book Podcasts, and we're an InfiniteComics.com podcast partner. And actually, that's DCInfinite.com. Their website's changed. It's more global about comics, so it's InfiniteComics.com. Sponsoring this episode is DCBService.com and InStockTrades.com. Over at DCBService.com, I am a fan of miniseries, and DC's got one coming out called Effigy. It's done by Tim Seeley with art by Marley Zacone. It's Zarcona. I know I butchered that. And W. Scott Forbes. After a sex tape scandal, former Hollywood child star turned Z-lister Chandra Jackson returns to her hometown of Effigy Mound, Illinois, to find a seemingly impossible crime, a fresh corpse in an ancient Indian burial site. Even weirder, the murder resembles a scene from an episode of her old TV show, Star Cop, a live-action children's show about a kid detective. As Chandra starts to investigate, she stumbles upon a bizarre cult that worships celebrities as eternal effigies. And these cult members aren't just worshiping, they're also ritually sacrificing anyone who defies their veneration of the beautiful and famous. So this looks like a fun series. It's $2.99 regularly, 50% off, only $149. It's a 12-issue series. I'm a big fan of these when they do a maxi series, and you don't see them done very often anymore, where you can get a really long, meaty story told, because sometimes you need that kind of depth in it. And 12 chapters for this story is going to be really cool to read about. But I'm into this one. It sounds interesting to me. So that's, like I said, rising star Tim Seeley is going to be on that. He's doing Batman Eternal right now and Grayson, but he's also well known for the Amazing Revival. So if you haven't checked out Tim Seeley's work, please make sure to check out Effigy, the 12-issue miniseries. Over at InStockTrades.com, they are doing this 2% extra over their orders. They got this promotion going on. And what will happen is if you place an order, and then you place another order within 8 days, you get an additional 2% off. So you place your initial order, and then let's say 8 days later, you decide, I want to get 2 or 3 other books or something like that. A book that's 40% off becomes 42% off. I just think it's a cool promotion. It's a way for them to say, hey, thank you for being loyal to us and coming back for more. And you can keep stacking that along the way. So it's cool, and that's over at InStockTrades.com. You'll find more details there. I just thought it was a cool promotion because they hadn't done this before, and that will be coming up. So check out their site to see when that order deal starts kicking in. But I thought that seeing as that's up and coming, it was something I wanted to shout on the show. And I want to thank DCBService.com and InStockTrades.com for continuing to support our podcast. Mr. Segulin, what kind of a podcast are we?
Raging Bullets is a spoiler podcast. We go in-depth into plotline, story twists, and whatnot of the comics we're discussing on the show. So if you haven't read the books, you may want to come back later so you can better enjoy the show.
This is exactly why you're a whatnot. Let's talk some comics.
You won't get away from me this time, Buster.
Jim, I want to talk about this event that's coming from DC, Convergence. It's going to be kicking off in April with a 0 issue, and then it's going to kick off with a weekly series afterwards, issues 1 through 8. And the idea behind Convergence is that Brainiac has taken various worlds, portions of various worlds throughout the multiverse, and captured them. Kind of what he's done with Kandor and various cities, but this is now places throughout the multiverse. The interesting thing about this is, not only do we have the usual players that you would expect throughout the multiverse that we've seen, you know, everything from the Vampire Batman to Red Sun Superman and classic versions of JSA, Kingdom Come, Flashpoint characters, but we've got some characters like, I'm looking at one panel with the Nightfall Asbats. We've got Parallax Hal Jordan. We've got our Aquaman without the hand and the hook, the original Steel. You know, I should say, you know, John Henry Irons as we knew him in the previous universe. This is something that I thought was interesting, though. It's the Crime Syndicate from Earth 3. And I mentioned the JSA. It's a JSA from Earth 2, the original JSA from Earth 2. It's a lot of characters that we have not seen in ages. I wonder if this is going to be a way for some of these characters to stick around after the fact. Well, let me ask you this. Would you want them to come to our Earth? Would you want them to stick around on various Earths in the multiverse? How would you want this to play out? Or do you want these characters just isolated to this event?
So that's actually kind of interesting. Part of me actually would like to see some of these people come into our world and come into mainstream and just be a part of this universe. Mm-hmm. And I'm trying to figure out, like, point out to different people, say, oh, this would be kind of neat, this would be kind of neat. But it is tough to say this person, you know, even though we have somebody else just like that. Like, it's hard to say as bats and bats, but that actually could work because Jean-Paul Valley could shift around who he is, etc., and he could be in this world, you know, whereas like the Vampire Bat would be tough for Vampire Bat and regular Batman, you know, to be in the same universe. Part of me like to take some of these characters that aren't in our universe, like Renee Montoya. Mm-hmm. There's the Renee Montoya question is in the one panel. I would love to have Renee back in this universe because the only sign I've seen of her was she was on the Dead board in the Gotham after one of the big events that happened. You know, she's listed as deceased in memory of. So I would love to have Renee back. And if they could use this to bring her in, that'd be kind of neat. Or some of the Shazam people, you know, because we really don't. We have them, but it'd be kind of interesting to have our Billy dealing with these other, you know, Captain Marvel Jr., or dealing with some of the others
Mary
in the Marvel family. Mary Marvel, yeah.
Now, in that panel you were mentioning, the Renee Montoya question, there's a Flash in there, which I'm assuming is Wally. Cassie Kane's in there. Harlequin, as we knew her in the previous universe. And that Batgirl's got blonde hair, so that's Stephanie Brown.
Right.
So it'd be interesting, even if this doesn't stick, you know, or these characters don't come, I shouldn't say doesn't stick, if these characters don't wind up coming back or they're isolated to other planets, we've got the Image universe and stuff like that. It'll be interesting to see these characters again. Basically, the way this is going to work is they're stopping all the books for 2 months. And during that 2-month stretch while this event is going on with this new villain, we are going to have one-shots that I think it's going to be 80 one-shots total over a 2-month stretch.
Yeah, I think so.
And they're going to be focusing on some of these worlds. Now, here's the thing. With this event, it's I'm reading a lot of the I usually avoid comments afterwards because it's usually the crabby people. and I find that ruins my excitement for something that I was interested in. Because the way I like these events now, and when they're doing them, is they do this central mini-series. That's really what you need to follow. So if you're on a budget, that's where you want to start with your budget. You're like, hey, I want to follow the event. I want to be in the know. I want to be able to talk to my friends about things that are going on. So you're basically in for 9 issues if you want to follow Convergence. Outside of that, you know, and I really encourage people to do this, don't get crabby about your budget. There's a reality. I face it every month. You face it every month, Jim. There's 2 ways that we get our budget. It's time and money. More often for me now, I find that my biggest budgetary concern is time. I'm stockpiling things not because of the fact that it's a financial issue. I don't have the time to read the things that I want to read. Like, I love Marvel. You know, it's fun. We do a DC podcast, but I love Marvel. I love Image. I love the stuff that's going on in Valiant. There's so many comic companies out there. Dynamite's doing some really cool things. IDW, stuff like that. Like, I'm a Gail Simone junkie, so I follow her work all over the place, and she's doing that Red Sonja stuff, which is, you know, amazing. And I don't stockpile any of that. But what ends up happening is, because I'm reading a lot of titles, there comes a point where it's like time up. I don't have the time to read everything that I want to. And obviously I prioritize my reading based on our podcast, so I'm reading a lot of the DC stuff that I'm really enjoying. But even in that case, I wind up stockpiling from DC Vertigo a lot, just because of the fact that we talk about the main universe more than we talk about Vertigo. So there's Vertigo titles that I love that get stockpiled because of it. Here's a series that I'm stockpiling right now that I adore, Saga. And, of course, Morning Glories, two of my favorite series I just haven't been able to get to, not because of quality, time. So what ends up happening is, with the budget, every month I've got to make the decision of, you know what, this is my stopping point. It just has to be. I'd love to keep picking up all these books, but, you know, I've got a certain budgetary point where I stop off and go, you know what, I just can't get any more because I'm not getting to these great books that are already in my pull list. So I'm just going to kick myself off here and keep a certain stockpile. But there comes a point where, like, my stockpile was getting ridiculous, and I had to, like spare myself down a bit and go, okay, I want to keep some of that for those weekends where it's, like, really fun to sit down and read a series, if that makes sense. You know, where I don't mind, like, reading 5 or 6 issues of a book to get caught up on it, and I know I am going to have the time to eventually do that. But there comes a point beyond that where you can't. But there's the financial end. I've had times in my life where I've been able to do 2-3 issues, 2-3 books a month, and that was it. You know, if you run into that category, you know, when events come around, just stick to your budget. You know, maybe stretch it a little bit if you can, you know, so that way you get the mini series or whatever. But otherwise, stick to your budget and just be happy doing that. I think the great problem we've got now in comics is there's too much good product. And I say that lovingly because of the fact that it's really easy now to make a perfect pull list. You know, where you can just say, all right, this is my max that I can spend, and I want those to be the absolute best titles that I'm reading, so that way I'm maximizing my dollar amount. So there comes a point where you've just got to really shuffle around your financial dollars so you're getting the maximum impact for it. I don't get crabby for this kind of stuff, though. I'm excited. This is very story-driven. I love the multiverse. To me, it's one of DC's, I think, biggest treats is the fact that there's multiple versions of these characters out there, some of them with a really rich history. The fact that this event's bringing them back as something that can be brought in as tools for the current universe, I think it's great. You know, I'm hoping some of this sticks so that way, I don't know that necessarily I need to have back the previous universe. I don't. I'm into the New 52. I'm enjoying these characters. But very similar to what I liked growing up with JLA and JSA, I would love to see team-ups with these characters periodically, you know, where because they're on another planet or something like that, or another version of our Earth, I should say, that we can, you know, see those characters team up again. We get a glimpse on what that character's doing now. That stuff is what I grew up with, and I really loved that. I loved seeing that the Golden Age Superman was married to Lois Lane. Golden Age Batman married and had kids, you know, with Selena Kyle. We had Huntress running around. Robin moved on to become kind of the Batman of that universe for a while. He wore like a hybrid costume and then eventually got an adult Robin costume to kind of be an homage. But I loved how that all, you know, played out. And I'd love to see that stuff, you know, play out for a new generation of people where maybe they started reading with the New 52 and now they can experience some of these characters the way I did through the multiverse. So I'm excited for this event. I think it's a cool event. To me, it only pays off if this material sticks around afterwards, in the sense that they're able to use certain tools from it. I think you said it best. Hey, it'd be great to have like a Renee Montoya back because of it. Well, certain characters in the old multiverse got traded over. Black Canary was on the Justice League. She was actually the JSA Black Canary that came over and was on the Justice League. And I'm going way back in the 70s. So, you know, stuff like that's really cool, and I'd love to see more of that.
Yeah, this is more toys, more toys for them to play with. just you take the creative team, let them, do their thing, and give them this, open up this door, open up this window for them. And it's whether it's just this current story, whether we get some future stuff out of this. I think the multiverse, as you say, the multiverse is just this great tool that they have at their disposal. So this is kind of neat in that they're opening up this and they're bringing it to the New 52, and they're introducing some of these concepts. And I'd like to think that this miniseries is going to have those lasting effects in the present day universe. But I'm happy with the New 52. I don't want them to undo or go back to what was in the past, even though I enjoyed that as well. Let's keep moving forward. Let's integrate some of this stuff. Let's take this piece here, this piece there, and have fun with it. Let's see what we can come up with. Let's see what because we got some very intelligent, creative people out there. Let them do their thing. And I think that's the best, when you sit back and you say, okay, what do you got? What are you going to give me? Like, image of Captain Carrot and the Zoo Crew. Mm-hmm. I've read very little on them, but it's, I like the fact that they're there. They're bringing them back into the mix. It's, of course, the Vampire Batman and Red Sun Superman, two that I absolutely, adored. And those are some stories that I really like, and anytime they're going to bring them back, I'm like, cool. And even the 5-year jump, the current storyline, oh God, I'm drawing a blank on with the Brainiac, right, the Brainiac 1 universe. We've got those images from there as well. So, is that becoming a multiverse? Is that going to play into this factor? It's kind of interesting. I'm looking at this image, and we've got the creepy guy. He's up near the top, right next to Batman. It's creepy guy, gray beard. I don't know who he is or what he is, but just something. And it was funny. The last time I looked at this image, I didn't notice this guy. And now I'm like, who the heck is that? What's this?
Is that the Wizard Shazam?
That could be Wizard Shazam. Maybe that is that. But I don't know. I want to know who that is. I want to see that. What's going on here? It's and I personally, I like the fact that they're kind of postponing the regular everyday monthlies, and they're just focusing on this big event. Because for me, I like that because it gives me a nice break in. I know where my reading is. It's pre-convergence, post-convergence. And as I'm looking at this stuff, I can say, okay, the storylines, I don't have to, because if you got a big event going on and you still have your monthly titles going on, you're like, is this before the big event or is this after the big event? So we've got this nice break in there. We've got just this moment in. And so I'm like, okay, neat. Let's see what we got going on.
Well, Uncle Sam and the Freedom Fighters, love seeing them there. Plastic Man's with them.
Yeah.
Besides seeing them, we got the Tangent universe down at the bottom. We've also got the DC 1 Million universe down at the bottom. Those way in the future versions of the DC characters. I love seeing this stuff. I think it's going to be great. I'm really excited to see some of these characters again. I love that there's going to be a couple one-shots.
Hey, I see Deathblow in Gen 13.
Yeah.
Come on. That's a universe I absolutely love. The Wildstorm universe. I love that universe. Mm-hmm. So there's what exactly is this, what it's going to be, and it's because some of the because I've read some of the comments as well, and people are just angry about a possible reboot, another reboot again from DC, and the only thing I can think of is they're thinking this is going to be a way to undo Flashpoint, and I don't see that. I don't see it as being a way to end Flashpoint. I think this is just a continuation of the story.
Yeah, I see this as a way of, now that Morrison's introduced multiversity, this is a way now to take advantage of the fact that there is a multiverse out there and say, okay, we got a whole bunch of characters here that people have been longing to see. This is a way to bring them in, and they don't have to all be on our Earth. Some of them could stick, where this is an opportunity to do that, and that's past DC history. They've done that before, and I think it's a cool thing to do. Why wouldn't you come up with a clever story? See, to me, the Renee Montoya thing, I know I keep going back to that one, but since you focused on her, I've been thinking that one through. And, it'd be great. I love Batwoman right now. Yeah. Imagine if she shows up. This isn't her Renee, but it's a Renee.
Yeah.
They had a relationship together, and now, you're face-to-face with this woman that you were in love with. what is that going to do to her? See, I'd love to see that kind of stuff. I mean, I don't see that necessarily happening in this event, but that's a toy that's on the table for the future. That, to me, is the strength of this. You can leave some things in play where, even if they're not in our world, if you do like a, multiverse kind of, Batwoman's able to go through the bleed or something like that. She encounters Renee. Now it's a good story.
And this Renee, the question Renee also did have a relationship with a Batwoman. Mm-hmm. So you have two characters from two different universes who did have relationships and who were involved with each other. Now they're getting together. And on the one side, her Renee is dead. On the other side, that relationship ended. And it didn't end well between the two of them. There's some negativity between them. So now, you've got this potential where what could happen with that. And I'm like, that'd be kind of neat for me. I'd like to see that story. Again, I'd like to see Renee back because she's a cool character, but even see some of this interaction, that'd be kind of nice.
But I would just tell people, if you get upset about, this kind of stuff, don't do that to yourself. You got to be realistic about your budget and just kind of embrace the fact that there's way too much comic product. I think it's a good thing. To me, I hope that the comic industry can sustain all the product that's out there. Because to me, what that means is there's a future for comics. So there's way too much on the shelf for me to grab and read. I like that it's a smorgasbord of different stuff, so I can grab the things that I'm most interested in. And I think that's really important to have that kind of variety there. But I want this stuff to be around for, another 50, 60 years, and then some. When I'm, old and gray, I want to still be able to read comics and enjoy them and complain about, the next reboot. 2 decades from now, complain about, DC's rebooting again. They do this every 20 years.
The thing I always say is just, the one thing you got to remember is everything is awesome. Everything is cool when you're part of a team. Everything is awesome.
Ow. It's funny how you can sing that and just nothing feels awesome after that. That's funny. But I'm excited for this event. I am. I think it's a neat thing.
I'm looking forward to seeing where this goes. This is one of those, again, I like the mystery where I think I got one idea in my head, but I know it's not going to go that way. Mm-hmm. I know there's going to be something different. And for me, the swerve and the unknown, the spoiler, I like that. It's kind of fun. I want to not be able to figure out what exactly is going to happen next. I like having this mystery.
I can't believe how excited I am to see Asbats again. I like Azrael. Guess what it is? Jean Paul Valley, because he's not in the New 52. I would love to see him again. I on some capacity. I mean, not necessarily. See, here's the thing. I'm looking at this, and I'm not really looking at it and going to myself, wow, all of these characters got to be back. No. I'd be happy if a couple of them stuck around, because I think that would be interesting for storytelling purposes. But I certainly don't want to see this entire landscape around every single month. I don't think you need it. But I think for an event, this is super cool to know that those toys are put back into a place where after this, they could be used again anytime a writer wants to. Yeah. That's smart. Why wouldn't you do that? Why would you limit the playground that your writers have? This is the right time to do this, though. If you take a look at how far into the New 52 we are, now is the time where you can really start introducing people to the concept of the multiverse. Morrison's already done that in his miniseries. And this is a new writer. This is a writer who hasn't been in DC who's doing this one. So I'm excited. His name's Jeff King, and he hasn't done anything in DC yet. This is going to be his first work. I'm excited. I hope it's good. To me, I am baffled by people that want an event to be awful or to fail, which it seems like there's certain people, and there's a post here that I really find that I relate to, where he just says, it's the one guy said it's like people who complain on a bus or a train. He said they're the smallest group of people on there. The rest of the people just kind of enjoy the ride. And I agree with that. I think most people with comics just enjoy the ride, and they want to see these events succeed. Marvel's doing Secret War somewhere around this time. I'm excited for that, too. Summer events, I don't know. I'm into that kind of stuff. It's great to kind of see something to get excited about. And this looks different. It's something different out of DC. So I can't wait to see what happens.
Our next discussion will be on Deathstroke #1. It's written and penciled by Tony S. Daniel, inked by Sandu Floria, with colored by Tomei Mori, letters by Rob Lay, cover by Daniel Flory and More, with a variant cover by Andrea Sorrentino, monster cover by Kevin O'Neill. The assistant editor is Jeremy Bent, and group editor is Eddie Berganza, with, of course, Deathstroke was created by Marv Wolfman and George Perez.
Oh my God, did I love this. And one of the things that I really loved about this is this was great action movie. And it's great action movie done with today's sensibilities. And there's a difference between that. Like, I grew up, like you did, with Schwarzenegger and Stallone. Loved that kind of stuff. The catch with that is, though, you don't want to do that today in the comic because it's going to appear dated. And why I'm saying it's very modernized, if you take a look at Deathstroke's costume, I really think this was a well-done costume. Because it's taken some of the elements of the classic Deathstroke, it's taken some of the elements of the New 52 Deathstroke revamp, also kind of simplified some of it. Sometimes there's a danger of going too 90s, where everything's got way too many pockets and way too many belts and straps and things like that. This has a nice balance to it, where it looks like an armor suit. Like, I actually see protective covering around the shins and the boot and the kneecaps. You know, just areas where you'd want to see protective covering, yet it also looks very functional in everything that's there. The chainmail pieces that are on there look great. Where there is belt work, it's there for a reason, you know, for gun straps or to holding swords in place and stuff like that. There's not, like, random things that just don't belong. And that's really important to me. Like, I really like this version of the costume. And just as a counterexample, I'm a big Hawkman fan. The New 52 version of his costume, when it first kicked in, that one that comes from the nth metal from inside him, it was too ornate to me. It was too busy. Like, there was too much going on in it. I like the version, my personal preference is the version that we're seeing right now in Future's End. This is a great example of how it's an improvement to the Deathstroke costume. I really find the color work in this, the actual drawing of the costume is great. I really enjoyed the art style of this issue. I really enjoyed the story. I can't be the only one who was rooting for Angelica to, like, stick around. I was very saddened by what happened to her because I thought she was a fantastic character, and I liked seeing that world of Deathstroke.
Within a couple pages, they had us hooked on her because we were both rooting for her. We're both like, man, this is kind of a cool character. I could see this, something happening. Maybe we get some neat, the softer, sentimental side of Deathstroke. Maybe we'd get to see, less of just the massive killing machine that he is, and maybe we'd see a bit of the human. Nope, not so much. And it's weird to say that, but this was just absolutely beautiful horror. This was just, you talk about artwork, and you got to give full credit on the full creative team. We've got writing and penciled by the same guy, so yes, you got a nice flow and just that feel there. But inks, colors, lettering, panel, these non-traditional panel usages to show the movement of the one kill, boom, 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 multiple kills right in succession. Some of these headshots, you just got the face with just the dead eyes and just the blood splatter behind. It's absolutely wonderful. There's just that great usage of the flow through, great just showing the actual dynamic of combat and just the chaos and just that, again, I'm going to throw out beauty of it. Just, this is something, it's gory, it's bloody, it's violent, but there is still just a beauty to it that I was like, dang, this is awesome.
Now, one of the things that I really liked about her when she was in this was the way that they treated the relationship. They start off in the beginning, they're lovers, but then partway through you see that she was helping him out because it was convenient for her, and it just seemed like financially it was more to her benefit to kind of go one way over the other in the long term. I was really clear she does not consider him a best friend or anything like that. She would gladly work with him because she recognizes his talents and skills and knows that financially for her, it's good for her to have that kind of relationship with him. But on the same token, if she's paid enough and it looks like it's not just lucrative in the short term, but also lucrative in the long term, she would turn on him in an instant. And I mean, that's the mercenary world. And she might have some regret there because of the fact that they were lovers, and I would buy into that. But the cool part was it felt different. It's a different sort of camaraderie and relationship that's there. You would shed a tear for that person, maybe, but it's business. And that business is going to be different than the way that normal people would operate. That, if you don't play into that, to me, this was a step above. I enjoyed the previous Deathstroke series that kicked off the New 52. I enjoyed that quite a bit. No knock to it. I was glad to see this series kick off because this was taking it to another level. Like, I liked that one. I loved this first issue. So I've got high hopes that this series is going to continue down the path that I'm seeing in this first issue, because it's definitely, to me, I don't know if you feel the same way or not, because I know you were a huge fan of the previous Deathstroke series. I'm not knocking it, but this is definitely a upgrade from what we were reading previously, in my mind.
Yeah. Oh God. Yeah. I will co-sign on that. I love the first run in the New 52. Deathstroke is one of those villains that I absolutely loved when he's done right, and he was done right last time. But this one, I think, because they opened with such carnage and such violence and such just showing us why this guy is this awesome killing machine, that it's kind of taken it up a notch. Plus, it's an interesting story where we're seeing just, you talk about this, what I thought was going to be this great relationship and future thing. Nope, that's snuffed out. But then you get him into a villain where he's, Deathstroke's a killer. Deathstroke's really tough to take out. We're seeing him in pain. We're seeing him bloody. We're seeing this guy do some serious damage to Deathstroke, as well as this guy's supporting casts. They drop a building on Deathstroke. They unleash, gunships and multiple ninjas and all types of craziness flying out at him. But it's the keep fighting. It's the scrambling. It's this, that, again, it was high action, but we did get some really cool Deathstroke moments. So the last series, yes, I absolutely loved it. This one, right from the gate, right from issue 1, even before I'm not even halfway through, I'm hooping and hollering and I'm cheering. I'm going, oh, God, yeah, thank you for bringing this back. So, outstanding.
Possum was really a great addition as well, because you were mentioning him earlier. One of the cool things about this villain being crafted in this story is there was a sequence where, Deathstroke's shoving the blade through, Deathstroke's been beaten down badly. He's hurt. He escapes by grabbing that sword and shoving it all the way through Possum's head. Possum was back up after that. He was like a Terminator. He just kept getting up and coming. I like that Deathstroke survived Possum. Deathstroke did not beat Possum. To me, that makes, I'm interested now. I'm interested in this series because of a good first issue. There's enough of a hook to make me go, wow, I want to see round 2 between them. How's Deathstroke going to handle that? Because look what Possum did to him. The numbers then, the overwhelming numbers when Deathstroke was escaping, you saw that double page of him shooting out. They were shooting at a building. You had ninjas coming down on him. Deathstroke was, robot ninjas, whatever those things were. Deathstroke was fighting all of those just for the purpose of not taking each one of them out, taking the ones that were in his way out so he could escape. Brings him to I Ching, and I like, sit, Mr. Wilson, and he falls right down.
Yeah.
I Ching, with his rich history going all the way back to Wonder Woman, the rich history of I Ching, now being a part of... See, I thought this when I read it, because it says, Master, your servant finally awakens after 16 days. I thought this was like a revamp of Deathstroke, where I Ching did something to, because of how badly Deathstroke was injured, they had to do something to him where now Deathstroke is younger looking, his eyes fixed. But now what I'm wondering is this a flashback? Deathstroke's knocked out and he's doing a flashback to his early meeting with I Ching, and we're seeing some of the origin. Because it says in the closing, next, the secret past of Slade Wilson. But I'm going to fully admit, when I first read this the first time through, I was thinking, oh my gosh, what did they do to alter Deathstroke? Yeah. And I was thinking to myself, do I like him without a patch? I don't know. It definitely got me interested. I wasn't mad by any of that. I was intrigued. But now I'm convinced it's a flashback. I don't know if I'm right or wrong, but what do you think that was?
Well, we're in the exact same boat. when I first read that, I was like, okay, they had to de-age him, degress him, or some mystic mumbo-jumbo whatnot, to... and that was the young Deathstroke who had just passed out on the table. They had done, their incantations and de-aged him, got his eye back, everything that, for the healing for just the massive damage he had. And I was thinking, okay, this would be kind of interesting to see a young Deathstroke with, all his knowledge and everything that he knows. And because I was thinking that's how they're redoing issue 1. But then, started reread throughs and thinking about it. This is probably a flashback, and this is probably I Ching's and Deathstroke's first meeting. He's reliving it, and he's redealing with what happened before while he's healing presently. So again, I'm kind of cool to see some backstory on Deathstroke. Let's we have good information on him already, but. Anytime you get some early stories of him, it's, kind of opens up the doorway to let us know, introduce a character back then. Well, let's bring that character to the present now. Let's see what we got going on. And it's one of the things that I like about a good Deathstroke story. And it's one of the times when it's okay to root for the bad guy when he's up against an even worse bad guy. It's you take we've got this bad guy, we've got an evil guy. He's not the megalomaniac trying to conquer the world villain. He's a mercenary. He's a killer. So he's not a good guy. He's a bad guy. But you sit there and you could root for him sometime when he's up against these really nasty monsters, these really nasty people. Like, okay, I can root for Deathstroke here because, that guy's worse. So you get those moments where you're just rooting for him, just because it's going to be payback time.
Between his television appearances on Arrow and his video game appearances in the Batman games, I've really been digging Deathstroke, and I'm just glad to see this character getting another shot. I hope people pick up this series because it was really, for me, this is the perfect kickoff issue if you like good action movie. And I really got to put it that way because this was, to me, I love action movies. I love that concept. I don't want all my comics to read that way. This totally read that way. And that's not diminishing it. I honestly think there's good action movies and then there's poorly done, cheesy action movies. This is a good action movie. And I can't wait for more. I actually just I kept turning the pages on this one. I loved rereading it and looking at the artwork again and enjoying the story. You were right about the panel usage. Some interesting panel usage in this that kept the action flow going all the way through. There was a lot to look at that was going on that was very story-driven. That's always, to me, one of the keys. If you're going to do this kind of thing with the artwork and you manage to make it so story-driven, that's where people are going to be entertained. And this was just a really well-done first issue.
Oh, God, yeah. And it's when I do my reading, I do my first read through, then I do my art read through, then I do another complete full read through, and this was one of those on that's the first read through. I was really focusing. I was stopping and looking at some artwork, but really on that second art read through, man, I just absolutely loved it. And an art read through, for anyone who doesn't know, is I don't read any words. I just look at the pictures, and because I already know what the story is going to be. I already have an understanding of what the story is. I just sit back and I appreciate what I'm getting, and this was just a true treat of the eyes. Especially, we talk about that 2-page spread where they're leveling a building, ninjas are flying down at them. You've got the Black Hawk, armored helicopters, just armor-piercing rounds leveling, and he's just doing the dive out, and it's 2-page spread. You're just like, man, this looks awesome.
Yeah. It's interesting. I was looking at what's coming up in that book, and there's going to be a Harley Quinn's going to be a guest star. And nice. I think when I was thinking of that, did you happen to read her annual yet?
No, I haven't read her annual yet.
Oh, here's the thing. There's 2 different versions of it. There's the paper version that is a rub and smell spectacular, where there actually is things in the issue you can rub and smell. Then there's a digital version. It's the one that was released through Comixology. And here's the funny part with it. I ended up grabbing the digital version because I was in the mood to read it. The digital version's different because you can't smell it. They put jokes in there that relate to it being digital.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I was really impressed that they did that. So I wanted to shout it out for people who are big fans of Harley Quinn, that there's actually a reason for both versions because they embrace the medium of both versions. I thought it's the same story, but the gags that are in there, where they're breaking the wall, are particularly geared towards the medium that it's dealing with. I just thought it was a neat thing to do, and I'm just shouting it out right now because of the fact that I was thinking about the fact that she's going to be in Deathstroke soon. I really like Harley Quinn. I'm liking the fact that she's got a series. I like that she's in Suicide Squad. A character like her going into Deathstroke, I think is just going to be, because of the Suicide Squad relationship, I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, she's a character that you get away with breaking down the fourth wall. Mm-hmm. It makes sense with her. Like the San Diego Comic-Con issue she had was absolutely hysterical. Interacting with some of the DC people and just her interacting at the con. I'm like, okay, this is, it's funny, goofy, but it doesn't lose you. And it doesn't lose me, especially when she appears in other books. They don't break down the fourth wall in the other books. We still get Harley in those other books, but it feels like the same character. It feels like the same type of person. You think about crazy people, they would look off into space and talk as if they think there's somebody else there, as if they think someone else will actually hear what they're saying. So it kind of fits for her.
I just thought it was funny that I ended up buying the annual twice.
I'm going to buy the digital now, so I'll be doing it as well.
Yeah, it was worth it just for the fact that they had to. It was fun to compare what they did, so it was neat. But for those of you that, if you're buying one or the other, it's really cool because you'll see quickly that there's some gags in there that are specific. It's not a ton. It's not overdone because the story is really what you're driven by. But I thought it was cool that they did address the fact that it was a different medium for both. You want to talk Lobo?
Oh, God, yeah.
Jim, our next chat's going to be about Lobo #1. Cullen Bunn is the writer, Riley Brown on pencils, Nelson DeCastro inks, Pete Patazis on colors, Travis Lanham letters, Anthony Marquet and Jeremy Bent assistant editors, Mike Cotton editor, Eddie Berganza group editor, Lobo created by Roger Sliffer and Keith Giffen, and apologies for any name butchery. I really wanted to talk about this book. I walked into Lobo with really low expectations. And let me explain that. I've been enjoying what they've been doing with Lobo in the New 52. I've been like, okay, kind of, they're doing a new version of Lobo. They're doing this weird twist where the old Lobo isn't really Lobo, and now we've got this new Lobo who's Lobo. And I don't think it's bad. I've been like, okay, that's an interesting twist, and I've been mildly interested in it. I didn't think it was a bad thing. I didn't think it was a great thing. I just was kind of somewhere in the middle, and I enjoyed his appearances, for example, in Supergirl.
Yeah.
But it was more I wanted to see Supergirl beat him down than anything else. So I walked into this book with kind of an interest as far as, okay, what are they going to do with him? But I wasn't like clicking my heels together for this book. So I walked in with low expectations. When the book kicked off in the beginning, it was kind of doing all the stuff that I expected. Really good artwork where we're seeing, what turns out to be old Lobo's head sitting there. And, new Lobo has kind of taken him down. And I get the idea they're trying to hand off that this is today's Lobo. And so I was interested in that. I like the look of the new guy. And I like that they went and did this whole thing where, Lobo can survive almost anything, especially, the old Lobo that we know him. So I like that the new Lobo was taking that into account. Where it really got for me was when he did that got kind of knocked out, and we had the memories of Caesarnia. And I'm like, oh, wait a minute. Now I'm starting to get interested in this. The art shift there was great. I liked the color switch. And we start to see a guy who has an attachment to his home planet on some level, especially with the female there. This is where it started to get interesting to me because I'm not a Lobo aficionado. I knew the old Lobo character. I saw Lobo more as a guest star in books. I didn't read a ton of old Lobo. So anybody listening to this, it's like, I'm a great Lobo fan. Sean, what are you talking about? Either they loved or hated this because of the fact that they were a big-time Lobo fan in the past. I totally get that if you have that perspective. I don't. Other than I'm very familiar with the character as a guest star in books. So this part was starting to get really, really interesting to me, this dream sequence, and how it took a dark turn, where it turned into a dream that became a nightmare for him. And we see that this is a man haunted by what happened to his planet. and his role and responsibility in what happened to his planet. That part is something that I find that's very interesting about this book. This is where it started to hook me, because I wasn't in the beginning. I was kind of like, all right, this is good. I'm into, Lobo versus Lobo. Fine. How are you going to keep me interested in what's going on? That stuff started to hook me into all this, so that when he woke up, I'm like, all right, let me give this guy a shot, because I was into that part. That was a really good storytelling bit. So that started to turn the book around for me. And I'm finding myself interested in following where this Lobo goes. I got more to say, but where were you at kind of on this book?
Okay, let's get the hate mail ready to come after me. I'm willing to accept it. I never liked Lobo. Mm-hmm. I didn't like hey, I'm the main man. I'm like, yeah, sure. He always annoyed me, and every time he was in a book, I wanted to see him get just smacked down and just completely beaten up and just whatnot. I've always wanted to see that guy go down. I've always wanted to see people just take him down a couple pegs. And the way his character was created, they really couldn't. Even when people are decapitating him, he always comes back because of the way they created just that level, that healing factor that he had. It was funny when they did that whole Marvel versus DC. They did Wolverine against Lobo, mm-hmm. and Wolverine won by basically just cutting off everything, and Lobo couldn't basically answer a 10 count. And I always thought that was kind of I like the fact that Wolverine won, but I always wanted to see Wolverine do more to him. I wanted to see it get even nastier, because I really I don't like the guy. And so when this issue came out, when they started introducing the new Lobo, different backstories and whatnot, and wherever they had him, and they introduced this concept of two Lobos, and this guy was different than that one. I'm like, okay, let me give this guy a try, because as I said, I really didn't like the arrogance and everything that the other one had. So opening up with the new Lobo taking the head of the old Lobo and then frying him so he can't come back, they had me at hello. They just took out the guy I didn't like. Okay, let's continue. Let's see what else they got in store. And just like with you, when the backstory and when you start getting glimpses of this guy, he is a killing machine. He is a mercenary. Again, it's another one of those get ready to root for the bad guys type of thing. He is a killer. He is really impressive at what he does, but there is something of this character that I can latch onto, and there's some stuff that I'm like, okay, I don't hate this guy. Let's see who he goes up against, who he's killing. And it did have me curious as the story is who the contractor is, because the one question that he asks himself at the end of the book, that was the first thing I asked myself. Because he's hired to go after these 8 deadly assassins in the universe. My first thought was, why wouldn't anybody go after Lobo? Because as much as I hate the guy, he is the best, one of, if not the best assassins in the universe. So why not go after him? So I'm curious to see why whoever hired these people didn't go after Lobo. I'm curious to see that part of the story.
Yeah, it was an interesting book where they turned me around, because I wasn't I was interested, but I felt kind of in the middle of this one. This was one where I honestly, I didn't read it right away. I kind of waited, and I eventually got to it in my stack, and I read it, and I'm like, wow, I really enjoyed this a lot more than I was expecting to. I like his ride, which Lobo's always had his cycle, and I like that they did like a new version of that. And for those of you that are Lobo fans out there, if you've read a lot of Lobo and you've got this rich history with the character, I get it. You've got that attachment to him. So I didn't have that. I didn't have enough reading of the character that I was in it. I'm probably closer to you, Jim, than them, in the sense that I just didn't really have a huge interest. I read a couple specials. I think we talked about a couple of them on the show that we did, and I enjoyed those, but I was never through the roof with Lobo going, wow, this is just a fantastic character that I love. This one I'm interested in. It's funny, we were talking about Deathstroke, and I didn't plan this, but we're talking about two characters that are more on the villain side of the DC universe. It's funny. Deathstroke has a gray area, which you're right. You got to put the quotes around villain. Lobo's case, I am not remotely confused at all. This is a bad dude. Yeah. And I do find that interesting. That's the hook that's got me. There was enough in this issue that has me back for issue 2. I thought the art was spectacular. The story is very well written. So they've got me interested and intrigued in something that walking in, I wasn't like, I was kind of like, okay, cool. So they did their job as a creative team. I'm interested in issue 2, and issue 2 will not fall so far down the stack. So they're climbing up the ladder for me. I'm not like clicking my heels together yet on it. I think out of the two of us, you're clearly in a different place than I'm at with it, but I really liked it, and I'm definitely in for issue 2.
Oh yeah. I think I'm a little bit stronger in it than you are, just from what you're saying, because again, as I said, it opened with the death of a character I didn't like. I'm like, all right, let's keep going, buddy. Let's see what you got. And I was curious as the story, but also again, we talked about with Deathstroke how the physical action and the physical artwork and the beauty of the gore. This one has another beauty of the gore, and especially some of these sequences that they show the movement of Lobo going through, just cutting down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 guys, on this one half-page panel. And, you kind of do that. I call it phantom art. I don't know what the technical term is, where it's not the first couple issues aren't as bright and crisp as the final page. So it shows you going from 1, 2, 3, 4, and you kind of see it shows the motion. I kind of like that style, and you definitely get some really cool, really neat-looking stuff as he's cutting people's heads in half and various. I think we got one guy there he's cut in half. We had a visceration where it goes from from down to up straight through the guy, and I'm like, okay, there's some neat gore going on here, but it didn't take me away from the artwork. It didn't take me away from the story. This wasn't just, about blood and carnage. This was about, okay, let's see what this guy can do, and he is good.
But it's about some really interesting carnage, because this is my favorite sequence. This is a book that built for me as it was going on. I started off with very low expectations at the beginning. I was kind of mildly interested, and then as the story progressed, I got more into it. This whole sequence where the guy walks in, the alien. Time to get this hootenanny started. Time to cash it. And we start seeing Lobo chopping appendages off, robotic and otherwise, and basically tells the guy, hey, listen, I can be persuaded to go easy on you in exchange for a little information. Who you working for, and also that machine over there that's got all the information that he needs. Well, if that'll give me the intel, what do I need you for? And you see the guy's head rolling across the floor. Sorry, not sorry. That just gives you a sense and a tone. And I do find that I was like, oh, this is kind of interesting, because this is clearly a character that's bad. I mean, they're not trying. There's no apologies here. He's not an anti-hero. He's a bad dude, and he's going to continue to be a bad dude. I think it's really important for this book to find and continue to find that balance where I'm interested in his backstory. I'd like to actually see more of that, while at the same time giving this kind of stuff, because I'm actually growing interested in this character, this new Lobo. The tough part with Lobo is, and probably where I'm not fair in the old version of Lobo, the old version of Lobo is clearly from an era and really defines that era very well. The heavy metal rocker era, that type of thing, and does that well. So, a fondness and attachment of it, if you were a big Lobo fan back in the day, you've probably got fond memories of the characters, the main man, and all that kind of stuff. And that my guest appearances that I read with Lobo back in those days, I liked him. I didn't love him. I liked him. But that's because I didn't read a lot of solo Lobo, so I don't have that attachment. This guy, there's an opportunity here for this creative team to get me interested in this newer version of Lobo. And they did that, at least for a first issue. I want to read issue 2. But I'm kind of in the middle on it right now, just because it's not the concept's been weird for me up until this point of the two Lobos and stuff. I just haven't been really into the guy, but I definitely will pick up issue 2.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I've already, I've got it here, so I will be reading issue 2 and just, continuing with this. It's funny because we have we do have the two killers. We do have the definite two different styles to them, but they do each have their own code.
Yeah.
We know this one won't kill dogs, even weird looking alien dogs. It's still, now granted, he feeds them the body parts of their previous caretakers, so you can, there is still that little bit of Lobo to him, but there is definitely, he is our Lobo.
You want to talk about Klarion?
Oh yeah. Our next discussion will be on Klarion #1. The writer is Ann Nochetti, with artist by Trevor McCarthy, colorist Guy Majors, letterer Pat Brousseau, cover by Trevor McCarthy, variant cover by Fraser Irving, group editor Brian Cunningham, editor Harvey Richards, with Klarion created by Jack Kirby, which I did not know that, by the way.
Klarion. I gotta say, this book, first of all, I thought it was very smart putting the artist interiors on the cover, because I like the artwork a lot. So when you're doing a mystical book like this, where I think art and color tone is so key to setting this book apart, that's pretty critical for me. Because this is another one that I was kind of like, okay, we're going to do another shot at Klarion, and, am I going to be interested in this version of him? I found myself, I'm pleasantly surprised at how much I enjoyed this book. It's a weird little book, but it was a fun, weird little book. Like, I really liked it. You got this alien, this other dimension kind of magician coming over to our world and trying to adapt and fit in. But he's fitting in like your kind of modern day goth style culture, of teen kids. So it fits. It was working. I was interested in Zell, the girl that he was with, and also this kind of hierarchy of, the cool magician kids versus the not so cool magician kids, and the ones rebelling against the system, and yet the ones trying to stay within some sort of system. It was a neat sort of concept. For an introductory first issue, I really quite liked this. What I'm interested with you is knowing your background with supernatural type stories and more of this kind of, witches and warlocks and vampires and that kind of underground. Where were you at on this one? Did you like this? Was this what you were expecting, or?
Well, actually, it was not what I was expecting, which is a good thing, by the way. Because Klarion is a character that I like him in small dosages. Mm-hmm. I like his interaction with other characters, but not him as the main focus. When the Seven Soldiers story came out, I was like, okay, that's kind of interesting. But his dealings with, when he made a guest appearance in Robin the one time, I thought was really kind of neat, just because of his interaction. Or anytime he makes a guest appearance somewhere else, I'm like, yeah, that's kind of cool, kind of interesting. He's a little bit of, the dark. He's a little bit of the light. He's a good guy, a bad guy. He's Klarion. He's the witch boy. He is his own little chaos, walking ball of chaos. And, that's kind of describes him. When I heard he was going to get his own title, I was like, how's that going to work for me? Because, again, I like his play off of other people and how he's dealt with, and, that I don't like him as the main focus. So I was a little bit concerned, but I got to say, I really did enjoy this. This was a nice, cool, little bit weird, little bit creepy, little bit magic, little bit, potential definitely for some teenage angst with to another level. Because, once you start adding this mystical world, once you start adding demons and witch boys, oh my, you get everything going on in there that you definitely, with the correct creative team, you can have some fun with this. And we're seeing some interesting developments from issue 1 with his supporting cast and where, how this is going to play out. And it's especially to the point where he's dealing with demons, he's dealing with magic users, he's dealing with I don't know what yet. So what's going to play out? Where's he going to handle? Where's he going to land when everything is said and done? So it's first issue has me curious about the character, where it's going to go. So definitely good job on that end.
I thought the artwork was stunning. For me, it's funny. I'm kind of where you're at as far as I was like, okay, we're doing a Klarion series. I'm interested in that because I was excited for a lot of the last 3 books we've talked about are characters that have either been shelved or haven't been done in the New 52 in a series. So I'm glad to see them experimenting with these things. So I was excited for that, as a concept, a global concept of, hey, let's try some unique character concept, put them out again. But Lobo and this were the 2 where I was kind of like, I don't know how I feel about that one. The artwork in this is stunning. What Trevor McCarthy was doing with creative paneling and also, with spreads where you would use, even when they're driving in the car in the beginning, you've got that kind of spiral thing where you actually see the motion of the car within the spiral, but on the outside are the panels continuing the story. I thought that was really spectacular. It added to that weirdness that you're talking about, and the weird actually was what was pulling me in. I was like, oh, wait, this is a little weird, but cool. I'm into this. Then as you continue the panelings, you see page panels where things that are rectangles have bendy things going on, and it's almost like a magical kind of flow through the book, where you see a page with eyeballs in the upper margins, but then the panels that are around it have this wave to them. none of it which is taking away from the story. It's adding to this mystique. And I've got to compliment the color work. Guy Major really is hitting a home run with the color work on this, because it's a combination of that's setting this dark tone that's not too dark. Because sometimes you take it too dark and it's like what's going on the page has no flair. It doesn't jump out at you. The purples and the red shading and things that he uses within this book, while at the same time shifting Klarion from using this kind of spell to look more human, was really well done in this book. I thought it was a really nice set apart. Because you got a kid that looks weird, but yet when he looks more human, when he has the more human skin tone, even though he's still got his pointy ear look and stuff like that, it works because of the people he's hanging with. It's just kind of
definite. And I got to tell you, I got to echo what you're saying about the artwork, because that for me is really the thing that this is a cool story, and I'm curious to see where it goes through. But definitely the artwork is something that kept me going. Wow, this is amazing, because and it's a nice accentuation of what the story being told as to the artwork. We have the non-traditional panels, and I'm so glad you mentioned how some of the panels had some creepy stuff and some goofy stuff. And I liked how when he was dealing with the techno type of wizardry people, it had the techno kind of feel to around the outside of the panels, where it had like the green grids and all that. But the color work, this is something that I am deeply just impressed with. Again, Guy Major is somebody who's done a lot of really cool stuff, so it's one of those, I don't want to say I'm surprised, because I've seen great stuff from him, but I just absolutely love the fact that we have these purple hues instead of just a pure solid dark or black. We've got this purple, so it lets you know it's shadowy, but we still get some cool details. Plus, it does add a little bit to the mystical side of it. Is that wall actually purple, or is it more of the shadowing? Is it, what's going on? What's the score? Because this could very easily have different color patterns and different color styling to them, because of the whole magic element behind it.
By the way, is it your week with Teakle or mine? Because I didn't know if the nice part about Teakle is you can mail Teakle and not have to worry about it. Other than to put down Fragile.
Because right now Teakle's in a jar, but you know what? Dead doesn't mean dead, and it's Rapunzel syndrome.
Yeah. I loved the lady in the Moody Museum. And, just added kind of to this whole weirdness there. What I think is the strength of this book. It embraced weirdness. And Clarion's a weird character. So you've got a great story with an interesting supporting cast that's being developed. You've got an art team. To me, the art team was the home run here. And I'm not discounting the writing at all. I don't mean it that way. But the art is so spectacular and stunning and adding to the weirdness of the script, that it's just making this interesting, unique world that I want. I'm all in for issue 2 on this one. On Lobo, they had a slow build to me, and they got me to a point where I'm interested in issue 2. This one is completely different in the sense that I loved the art so much and the weirdness of this thing that I want to read more for issue 2. So this is another team that did a really good job for that purpose, but to me, the panel structure throughout this, I'm paging through it right now just as we're chatting, and it's like eye candy. I love the relationship with Zell, because you've now given Klarion, who I kind of am where you at. Clarion's kind of unlikable. So you've got to put a supporting cast that makes him sympathetic, where you're kind of like, oh, because Zell's probably the most normal character in this book. And I'm like, okay, Zell's the nice, pretty girl that all of a sudden Klarion has this friendship with. And he's really supportive of her and innocent when he's with Zell. That's the part Zell makes me like Klarion. On those pages, I'm like, oh, I'm actually starting to like this kid. And it's thanks to Zell. I feel like Zell's Clarion's advocate on that page. Where I'm kind of she's like, you don't know Klarion like I do. And I'm like, all right, Zell, I get your point. I'm like, all right, then maybe I'll follow this kid. It's so great writing on that page of getting me interested. And I did at this point, the only way you're going to really do something cool with Klarion is you've got to take people like Rasp and make you really want to see Klarion cause trouble for Ras. I did. By the end of this, I'm like all in for Klarion as far as like, I'm like, all right, this is a kid I didn't like in the beginning of the book. Now I want to see Klarion really mess this guy up and do horrible things to him. That is a victory at the end.
It's that you want to see, you want to see the retribution. You want to see the vengeance. And I think that is, again, we've had, this episode, we've had 3 characters who are nice people. They're all pretty nasty. And Klarion of the 3 is probably, he's unlikable, but I don't put him in the villain category. I put him more as like the lost boy who doesn't really know what the deal is, and he could go either side. He's at that crossroads. And you see the supporting cast in the house kind of looking at him that way, where this kid could go one of 2 ways. We got to make sure we guide him the correct path, because he is that growing, he is growing in the magic, and he is just, even though in his mind he's already grown in it and he knows this is everyday natural for him because that's what everyone does back where he's from, but he still has a lot to learn, especially now that he's in this whole new world that he's got to learn the score and how things happen here. So it's, I'm really interested in this book. This was something that the artwork just absolutely did some beautiful stuff, but there was a couple little stuff on story-wise that I caught on either second read-throughs and whatnot, and I got to just give full credit to that. I like the fact that when Klarion first shows up at the house, he reads the sign, and he can see very clearly that it says job with room and all that, and when he walks in, he's like, hey, I'm here about the job. Like, well, and the answer was, you can read the sign, so you know the score. And I like the fact that when magic has that little barriers for us muggles who can't read and can't understand it, hey, if you can't read the sign, guess what? You're not going to walk in for it. You're not going to say, hey, what does this say? No, you're just going to keep moving on. Maybe you won't even see the house because of the magic barriers. And I like those little subtle magic stuff, especially. And then another scene that I thought was really cool when he's talking about dead Teakle, and he's like, might be time to conjure up a new best friend. And when he thinks it, you see all the animals in the area scatter.
Yes.
And that was something I didn't notice the first time through. I'm like, oh my God, those animals are realizing, get out of here.
Yeah, that was absolutely perfect. I really liked that as well. It's funny how it was a book that, again, this is something that I really liked about all 3 books. I was getting worried for a while there that DC was starting to play it safe, because we were seeing a lot of cancellations of books that were about their more unique characters. And you always use the term palette cleansers. I need those characters. I need the characters that are just a little unique, that add a little life to the universe. So these books, as they were going on, they were taking characters that, Lobo is a great example. A character I just wasn't really interested in at all before. Well, I'm in for issue 2. I'm actually interested in reading issue 2. And I'd have no problem saying on this show, I'm going to read issue 2 because we do the podcast. And I have no problem saying that. I'm not employed by DC. I'm actually interested in issue 2 of that book. Klarion, by the end of it, they could have taken out the dialogue and the art would have had me reading issue 2 gleefully, just kind of reading through it. The dialogue is that's why I said I'm not taking anything away from the script work. It's just one of those books where I think it was so visually pleasing right from the get-go that to me the interesting, weird story was a bonus. Because I really liked the artwork so much that it puts it just in a different category. Probably out of the 3 books, the best artwork for me was in that book. And that's not taking anything away from the other 2 books. It's a compliment to Klarion, because I just think the artist and the colorist really have an understanding of the weird nature of this world that they're crafting, and I can't wait for more.
Yeah, I agree with you. This was an absolutely beautiful book, and I'm well into for number 2 on number 2 plus for me on this one. I really want to see where this goes and where Klarion, what kind of character he develops into, whether he becomes the hero or whether he becomes the villain, because this is somebody he's walking the cusp right now, and I don't know where it's going to go, where they're going to take him.
Can we talk Arkham Manor number 1?
Oh, yes.
Our next review is going to be of Arkham Manor number 1, written by Jerry Duggan, art by Sean Crystal, colors by Dave McCaig, letters by Travis Lanham, cover by Crystal and McCaig, variant cover by Eric Kennett. Matt Humphreys is the assistant editor. Mark Doyle is the editor, and Batman created by Bob Kane. The events of this story take place after Batman Eternal number 30. And apologies for any name butchery. This was an interesting book. I didn't know how I'd feel about this one. I mean, it's a Batman book. They got me. I'm into the whole Batman Eternal storyline. So to see what is happening with the Manor, I didn't know the premise of this book and what they were going to do with it. The idea that Arkham Asylum fell into the ground, and now we need an Arkham Manor, and having Bruce Wayne dedicate Wayne Manor to this purpose. The status quo change for Batman here is huge, because for the longest time now, we've had Batman living at the Manor. And we're going back to an interesting concept where his base of operations has to be in a different place than the Manor, but the cave is still below it. Yeah. So all of the villains that he's putting away are actually above the Batcave now. Interesting way to keep an eye on them. I love this concept. As a concept, it's very interesting to me. It's a good way to set the book aside. I'm interested to see where this book goes.
Yeah, I'm curious again. This is another one of those where I liked the story and I was like, okay, let's keep going with this. Let's see where it goes. And the concept of having Wayne Manor become Arkham, the new asylum, is a really fascinating thing. I don't know exactly how I feel about not having there be a Wayne Manor anymore. And going forward, if they're going to keep this book alive, if they're going to keep this going forward in the other titles, they're not going to be able to have Wayne Manor anymore. So they're going to have to make sure they change. If they want continuity across the board, they're going to have to change it everywhere. And I'm kind of curious to see how they handle it, because there's going to be, and it's not directly in the Bat titles, Batman and Detective, but in the other Bat Universe titles. I'm thinking, Grayson, any of the Red Robin, Teen Titan stuff, Batgirl, Batwoman, any of the Bat-related characters, having them address and understand and deal with the fact that there is no Wayne Manor. And those are the kind of stuff that I'm really curious to see where it plays out and how it plays out.
Well, they're going to be consistent with that. I'm not worried about that concept, but I think you're right. I think what's going to be interesting with that is how it's addressed elsewhere and when. I don't think you don't want to go super crazy with it right away. You want that to be a gradual thing. But the idea that the events are so dire in Batman Eternal that he's no longer able to hold on to the house, and it just becomes, a way to deal with the issues that are going on with the Arkhams. Really, really cool.
Yeah, and I don't think I'm not saying, when I'm saying about the other titles, I don't think they're not going to address it. I'm confident everyone across the board. I think this is, for me, the book itself is one thing, but I think the opening of the opportunities in the other titles is something even more. Mm-hmm. And that's the thing that I think for me is the biggest strength of this, is the opportunities in future stories, not just within these pages. I don't know how this is going to play out with Arkham Manor and how much you can really do about the asylum. Granted, it is Arkham, it is Gotham, so you got some crazy people inside there, and you can always have a little bit of fun with that. But longevity story-wise, I don't know how this is going to play out, but the interaction of the other characters and them dealing with it and the ramifications, that's the stuff that I'm curious to see. And I wonder if they're going to show some of that stuff in this title, if they're going to let them handle it in their own book.
I think what's going to be interesting here is to see how much they flesh out the character identity of Jack Shaw. Batman's new matches Malone, so to speak, when he's, inside Arkham Manor. I like that they're giving him, we're supposed to believe that Batman is this, master of disguise. We don't use this enough. So I think the tool here of this Jack Shaw, I'm hoping is something they tap into a bit. Because to me, it's more interesting to see what is it like when Batman has to go into Arkham Manor as Jack Shaw. And how does he develop that persona so he's actually believable, to utilize that in some way that would benefit him in his Batman role. Because if that isn't happening in this title, you're missing an opportunity. That's where I think this book has the potential to be unique, is because it's Wayne Manor and Batman having a unique access to it. That in and of itself provides some interesting storytelling opportunities that if you aren't doing that, this book won't have any legs.
Yeah. And I did like the fact that with some of Bruce's inner dialogue, you do see him, comment about how he had thought about transforming parts of the cave into a prison cell for some of the worst of Arkham and not turning them over to Arkham. So now they're in the house above him, and he's down there just keeping an eye on everything. And it's, in a way, it does fit Batman that he would allow this to happen and that he would make sure this and, direct it right into it so he can keep a close eye on everything that's going on with this asylum, with the inmates, with the people running the asylum. It's that Batman control issues that he has. We're seeing right here up front and up close and personal that he's going to keep a hands on everything.
When Alfred's talking about what happened to the manor and Bruce reflecting on the fact that it's Alfred's home too, I like when we have those moments where Alfred, he's not just a butler, he's a member of the family in a way that no other cast member of the Batman universe is. So Bruce having to deal with the fact that this is something that's going to affect Alfred is pretty huge to me. And I like that opportunity. The apartment of Bruce Wayne, the idea of having him have that kind of different base. This is stuff that, they did a penthouse thing with him in the 70s that I really quite liked. Doing this today and have it being story-driven was a good move, too. Do I want to see this be permanent? No. At some point in time, I want to see him retake the manor. That'll be cool. But for now, as far as just to shake up the universe and tell some interesting stories, I think this has a lot of potential with seeing Alfred's reaction, the Jack Shaw thing, what it's like when Bruce is inside his house, recognizing that it's a prison now, what memories are going to be drummed up because of it, and how it's going to be a violation of some of his memories in a way that he probably doesn't realize yet. And I think those are going to be some interesting storytelling opportunities.
Yeah, and you get the one panel where I thought it was a really cool 2-page spread where, Batman's first walking into the manor, and this time for the first time he's walking through the front door. And I like just that comment, his inner dialogue, that is really, as Batman, he doesn't walk through the front door. He always goes in through his cave entrance. And on the one side, you see young Bruce Wayne as a little boy with, Gordon there, the family portrait, and just everything. And on the other side, you've got the Bat, and you've got, Bullock, you've got, Gordon. It's you got the doctor there, and et cetera. And I thought that was a really cool way to bring it home about, pardon the pun about bringing it home, but bring it home that there is the duality of him, and this isn't just going to be about a physical beat up Batman's coolness. There is going to be the psychological stuff going on here, and that I think is something that I'm kind of fascinated with how deep they're going to go in these pages, because with Bruce having his alter ego, his secret identity committed and put into Arkham, how much of in his head are they going to get?
I don't know. That's the part that I think is interesting to me. And just what characters, are there going to be new supporting casts? They're going to be a part of this as well. They're going to be introduced when, that are the people running Arkham Manor, so to speak. And what their interactions are like with Jack Shaw. Are they going to be good? Are they going to be bad? Are they going to be somewhere in between? That part is interesting as well. So I don't know. We'll see what happens with this book. It was a good introductory issue. It kind of falls, it hasn't gotten to the point where I really see the direction of the book yet. So I think you and I, just from our tentative comments on it, are kind of in the same place. I think it was a good issue. It got me interested in reading more. I'm very curious to see potentially where this book could go.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I think we're in a solid position, the same field here, because it is a curiousness, and there is an unknown factor with this, and I wanted to see where it goes through. But as I say that, I don't know. I am tentative on it. Our next issue will be Trinity of Sin #1. And before I give out the creative team, first let me just start with an apology up front, because I will be butchering names, but this was an absolutely beautiful and well done book. So I do not want anyone to be insulted by that. It's written by J.M. DeMatteis with pencils by Yvel Guichet, Guichet, inks by Jason Goiter, with letterer DZ Cienti, colors by Gabe Iltab, Eltaeb, with Gilliam Marsh and Tomi Mori on cover, with the variant cover by Cully Hamner and Matt Wilson. The group editor is Brian Cunningham, and the editor is Darren Shane.
I'm actually, a lot of your comments that you were talking about your feelings about the book that you could tell right when you're talking about the creative team, I couldn't agree more. I've been a fan of the Trinity of Sin in general. Putting them together in one book was a really good move because at this point we've developed this interesting backstory about these three characters that have been through eternity condemned because of sin. So not only have they had their specific reasons for being a part of it, they sort of know their backstories with regards to each other. But like in the case of the question, he doesn't. And
he knows nothing, and I love that.
Yeah, and resents them for it. Like each one of them doesn't really trust the other two for various reasons. You would argue that Pandora and Phantom Stranger are the most likely to be buddy cops in this. But even that relationship is very tentative because of their rich history. The sense of longevity, and that's why I think it's good that it's waited this long for these three to now be in a book together, because there's a sense of longevity that's been developed now in how long these characters have been around in the world that is the New 52. That has made them all interesting. And the writing I thought was really terrific. The artwork was really terrific. To me, getting to know more about the question is probably something that I'm the most excited about in this book because we haven't had a chance to really delve heavily into this version of the question on this kind of level, and I want to see more of that. And using these two that we're more familiar with as that kind of linchpin to seeing more about him, I think is a really good move because I'm intrigued by him.
Oh, God, yeah. Yeah, it's with the individual issues they had going with Pandora and with Phantom Stranger. I was like, these are some really cool books. I was enjoying them. I was like, yeah. Then when they announced this, bringing them all together, I was like, bingo. This is something we need to have. And this is one of those, where it's a relaunch, reboot, new story, however you want to comment on it, but it still takes everything that we had before, pulls it forward, and brings them together. These three are well connected together, and this book makes sense to me, and I'm really happy we're going to get more of who the question is in this. When they first did the whole question thing as being a member of the Trinity of Sin, I did feel a little bit bad that we were losing the previous guy. We were losing that previous question, and just who he was, and they were completely changing him. And they didn't give us any more information on him. He was still just, since the reboot, he's still this giant mystery. So the fact that they're now bringing him in stronger into the story between the three of them, we're going to start learning, I'm assuming we're going to start learning who he is, as well as building on the other building blocks for the other two characters. This is something that I was like, man, this is kind of cool. And then by the end of this issue, I was like, this is a solid story. This is a really good-looking book. I do want to reiterate that, even though I insulted everyone by their butchering their names, I absolutely love the artwork and the story that was laid out. This was a very strong read for me, and it was something I was very happy with.
Yeah, I really enjoyed this as well for a lot of the reasons you're mentioning. The punishment of him losing his identity.
Yeah.
Like, not knowing who you are and knowing that it's because you were being punished that's like the worst part, because I can't imagine what it's like for somebody to wake up with amnesia, to not remember. Like, I get frustrated when I don't remember where I put my keys. I can't imagine what it's like to lose everything, but to know on top of that, like rubbing salt on the wounds, to know you will not know who you are, what you look like, what your past was, anything about yourself. There's no way to find out. And the reason why is because you're being punished. At this point, even if he finds out at this point, he's been punished so long for that the damage to his psyche and the frustration and the way he tentatively reacts to the world and the people around him with is, I think, just so brilliantly developed. I'm a big fan of the Vic Sage question. I was glad to see Vic Sage is in New Suicide Squad, just so there's Vic Sage somewhere.
Yeah, somewhere.
But for me, this character, I don't look at this character as a replacement for that question, which I know we're in the same place with that one. But I'm interested, at this point in time, to see who he is and what he's all about.
Yeah, it's interesting because you look at the Trinity of Sin, who we have here. You've got, Pandora, who they've flat out by this point in time have said, you know what, you really weren't guilty of anything. You were wrongly convicted. And there have been multiple people who have told her, you've been wrongly convicted. So she was punished and tortured for all this time because of, she just happened to be the person who happened to be there. It wasn't that she's evil and said, I'm going to unleash the evil on world. No. And then you've got, Phantom Stranger. Well, he kind of had his betrayal, but, that's well documented what he did. Question, what did he do that was equal, what the Phantom Stranger did and what Pandora did? What level of atrocity could he have possibly done? And it is, seeing demons and various things just keep attacking him throughout this issue, opening up with this multi-armed demon creature that, killed that nice, woman who was giving him a place to stay. And, where is this going? Who is this thing? There's just so many questions that are being raised about the question that I'm like, man, this is awesome.
With the Phantom Stranger story basically being the Judas story, where he is trying to redeem himself for what he did, and knowing that he never really can. I've always found that intriguing. Pandora's an interesting puzzle for me because I don't think she should have been punished. I'm equally interested in seeing the question because is it going to be that sort of twist where, does he fall one way, does he fall one other, or is his story somewhere in the middle? I don't know. When they're put together on the beach, when they all show up there, and, Phantom Stranger and Pandora, I'm surprised to see you too. The question immediately assumes in his question, what have you done? This is something that Pandora did that brought them there. That type of thing was, I thought, very telling on what their relationship's like. What happened to Dr. 13 in this story, I thought was, we're not ignoring the fact that this was a supporting cast member for the Phantom Stranger. Major damage done to Dr. 13 in that, who's done, right?
Well, not necessarily.
Yeah.
Yeah, you think about it. He had a sword run through his body, so yes, that would put a hurting on somebody. And he is lifeless, laying, in a slab there. So yes, he's dead. But I love the fact that they did bring up the fact that the sword that ran him through trapped the soul.
Right.
So if they can get to the sword, if they can pull out the soul, maybe we could get 13 back. Yeah. And it's one of those things where you say death doesn't matter in comic books. Well, here they've gotten out, but it's well crafted within the Magic universe. So I was kind of happy that they gave us this great out, and they're leading us very upfront how this is going to play out. So odds are we're going to get them back, but you never completely know with these guys. We could very easily be out one supporting cast member, because it's just the nature of being around these Magic type creatures. You don't have a long life expectancy when you're the supporting cast to one of them. So it kind of stinks for him, but I'm rooting for 13 to get him back because I do like him as a character, and I like how they've developed him in this universe.
Yeah, and I would still like to see a supporting cast in this book, regardless of the fact that we've got three main characters. I think that's important to this world. And to have certain supporting cast members be directly connected to certain members of the team, I think is important, because it just keeps the sense of Animal Man being on Justice League United. It's interesting to see that his family still makes appearances and stuff like that. Those type of things are interesting to me. You want to do that with these books as well, because you've made these characters important to us. So I agree with you. When Phantom Stranger's like going after the person who's done this to Dr. 13, Pandora pleading with him and saying, look, you've made centuries of progress here. I know how far you've come in redemption. Don't undo that. Don't unravel that. And her decision to go with him to support, I thought, was really telling on who she is as a person. And you see these two are at least bonding in a friendship, or at least mutual respect over longevity. And leaving that cliffhanger at the end of them facing this demon, I thought was really cool. I really liked the ending of this. The artwork was really, I agree with you, the artwork was really good on this book. I love the story. I'm a big J.M. DeMatteis fan, from like Moonshadow and Elm and all kinds of different things. I mean, you could run off a list of the amazing things that J.M. DeMatteis has touched. So you had me at J.M. DeMatteis. The art team matching the quality of the story we're getting is really good, and I'm glad this book delivers.
Yeah, and I do like, with as I said, with the question, you get these last couple panels where it looks like Phantom Stranger and Pandora are going off, but then you see him back at that house with that lady who was kind to him. And I like they put in there how it's Pandora and Phantom Stranger going on. Hey, he's only motivated, driven by hate, and and there's just all this stuff, and you see these moments where he's like taking her hand. Right then and there he's deciding, I've got to have vengeance here. I've got to, retribution for this person. I got to see who's behind it. So, it's these panels that are going to drive him into next issue where he joins the other two in the fight, and that pulls him into it. So I'm glad to see we're getting these moments. Again, it's the character growth of, the question, because who he is, what it is, everything about him, just there. It's that giant unknown that even though he doesn't know his past, he's still going to have to explore who he is now. And that's what he's got to come to terms with. He's got to come to terms with who he is and how he's going to act currently. And that's where Phantom Stranger's made his growth. That's where Pandora's made her growth, where they're accepting who they are now. And I think that's going to be kind of a running trend, or the running story with these characters. It's who I am, what I'm going to do, what I can do now. And I'm looking forward to that, and I'm hoping we'll see some more growth that way.
It's interesting how he looks at himself as a blameless man. And
yeah.
I can't wait to see what
he did.
Yeah, that's good stuff.
What do you think it could be?
Oh.
Because you think about just the two level of betrayal that the other two had. You've got Judas and you've got unleashing all of evil on mankind. Those are two pretty high levels of evil. What did the question do?
Although she was set up, I mean,
right, true.
So it's,
maybe he set her up.
yeah. Who knows?
How interesting would that be if he was the guy who set up both of them somehow? If somehow they tie that he is the linchpin between the two of them, like he planted
he's
Pandora's box and he set up so that Judas would betray Jesus.
In which case, though, like these gods on this council of eternity, they got some things really wrong. I'd love to sit down with them and have like a little chat about like Pandora in particular. Guys, you're a little harsh.
Well, it was funny when I was a kid. I got in trouble with a nun over comments I made about Judas, because I was like, yeah, he betrayed Christ and it's terrible. And then he goes and hangs himself. And the question, it was a simple question in my head. I didn't think it'd get me in trouble, but it did. Because I said, well, if Judas hadn't done what he did, Jesus never would have suffered and died for our sins, would have never risen, from 3 And it's like, so in a sense, he wasn't the bad guy in the picture. He needed to do what he needed to do for the story to be told out. And just that little questioning and comments got me in trouble. Yeah.
It's funny, though, when you talk about forgiveness, at what point in time is there forgiveness for Judas? I mean, if you look at the teachings of the religion, yeah. But kind of universally, when people talk about Judas, no, or I don't know. I mean, I think people are very torn on that. It's an interesting, I think the comic book exploration of this plays around with some religious lore and does their own take on this. And I think it's interesting. I find it intriguing. I don't find that it spits in the face of religion. I just find that it's exploring an interesting, like, what if.
Yeah. And I was kind of, I'm glad to see that they are being respectful towards this, because when you take like the Greek mythology and the Greek gods and stuff like that, it's that at one point in time was somebody's religious base, that was someone's faith and belief, and so at the time you wouldn't want to insult them, but I don't think there's anybody around who still practices, who still worships the Greek gods. So I don't think you got to worry about insulting or upsetting anybody. But when you got Judas,
hey, keep that up. I'll go all Hermes on you.
But well, exactly. See, I'm not too worried about someone who worships Zeus coming down and saying, "Hey, Sensei, that was rude what you said about my man." Whereas when you got somebody like Judas, who's such a pivotal part of the whole Roman Catholic or the Christian faith and all the various sects and whatnot you have out there, he is a major character in this. And you start talking about Jesus, you start talking about God, you start talking about the various religious faiths that people are actively practicing, you got to be very careful. And I do like the fact that they are, they're using him, and the way they're using him, where it was a punishment, and he is trying to make redemption. And that 5 year later jump forward, we see he has full redemption for what he did. The last of the 30 pieces of silver finally falls off and finally is reclaimed, and he's free. And I love seeing the redemption of Judas, and what type of person he's become throughout his trials and tribulations that have made him the Phantom Stranger. So there's definitely some cool stuff that they can go with all three of these characters, and this is a title that has some great foundation in the previous stories going forward. So when you get a solid foundation, I'm really excited where this is going to go.
Yeah, we'll see how much of a believer you are when you open up one gift for your birthday and it's a mirror. And you open up, and you're wondering if you open up the next gift and it's going to be Medusa's head.
Well, that'd be a tough one.
Yeah, it is. I'm glad that they took the courageous move of doing this, because I'm Catholic. I don't feel like anything when they've done anything with Phantom Stranger because he's Judas has like affected my religion or faith or anything like that. I'm glad to see them. I think it's kind of a bold move to make him Judas, and I think it's an intriguing move. And I feel if they do stuff like this in comics or wherever, and it changes your faith, or if you feel it flies in the face of your faith, I don't know how much quote-unquote faith you actually have, because it's a story. I mean, it's an interpretation of something. It doesn't have to fly in the face of that. I just think it's interesting that they're using that part as part of the lore, and I think it makes for a better story.
Oh, definitely. That the fact that and it's funny because Judas does just the phrase Judas. It's outside of the religion. Where if somebody betrays somebody else, the first thing you throw out is, "Oh, he's such a Judas."
Yeah.
It's just like doubting Thomas. That's another. It made it from the religious base into present day vernacular, where it's part of just non-religious people will still know what that phrase means.
I don't believe that.
I almost commented. I almost commented. I'm like, oh.
Good book, though.
Like a human helicopter, the Flash rotates his body, rising faster, faster!
Hey, what's up, Sean and Jim? This is Brendan calling out New Orleans again. I'm actually closing at my restaurant right now, and I had a couple of minutes. And I had the Arkham Manor #1 issue with me, and I just happened to have glazed through it finally. I gotta call and talk about this book, man. I don't know. It's I'm loving it. It's awesome. But I don't know how I feel about knowing so much about Batman after Batman Eternal. I've been so entrenched in this Batman Eternal story, and I've just yesterday finished reading the issue where spoilers, the Arkham Asylum pretty much blows up and the Spectre shows up. And so now all of a sudden, we're seeing this future storyline going on with Arkham Manor. And it looks awesome, and I'm really excited about it. But I guess actually the point of my call is, how do you guys feel about this? Because it seems to be something that Snyder's doing a lot with his work right now, with Batman Eternal. Encompassing so much of the Batman universe, and there having to be ramifications throughout the entire, line of not just Batman books. I didn't listen to the show this week, but I know you guys are covering Catwoman. I haven't read it, but it's definitely, it reached all the way over to Catwoman because she's now going to be a crime boss. So how do you guys feel about these stories kicking off before Batman Eternal? Do you think it takes anything away from the storyline of Batman Eternal? I mean, not that it would, but it does take some of the shock and surprise away. Like Alfred is obviously in the picture, and there's a couple of other things that you get hinted in Batman 35 of what would have happened after Batman Eternal. So how do you guys feel about it? I'm still loving it. The stories are great. I'm going to love it no matter what. But I'm not sure how I feel about the whole, jumping ahead while we're still into the story and we're still reading it. So I wanted to hear you guys' opinion, your guys' feedback on it. What do you think? Let me know. But man, what an issue, and I can't wait to see what Bruce is going to do in Arkham Manor. So anyway, guys, keep up the work with a good show. It's definitely entertaining. I am listening to it right now as I close my restaurant after I read my comic book. So I appreciate you guys keeping me up while I count my money. Have a good night.
That's interesting. We didn't really talk about that when we were talking about Arkham Manor. The fact that there are elements of the ending of Batman Eternal that we know, like we know the fate of Alfred,
right?
But we don't know how he got here. And we know the stuff with Arkham Manor. We know other things, like you mentioned, that's going on in Endgame right now in Batman 35. Does that bother you?
Not really. Yeah. I think, for me, it's the process of getting there. I could, you think about like the story Death of Superman. You knew Superman was going to die. So, the fact by the title, it didn't really ruin anything on how he actually died. And the return of Superman. He's coming back. Well, how does it happen? So we know the end game, what's going to happen, that Alfred's going to be fine. Bruce is going to lose some money, but he's still going to be Batman. Bruce is going to quote unquote lose the manor, going to lose the family fortune, which in my head, I'm like, he's not actually probably losing it, but it's more of an appearance to get things over. But how it actually plays out, what actually happens to the big bad in Batman Eternal, this doesn't tell us that. It's not giving away the big stuff. It's not giving away the details of it on the how it happened. They're just giving the what. So for me, it's not ruining anything, and it's not ending, taking away from it, because it's the journey getting there. Certain swerves and surprises. If it was a really big swerve and surprise, then yeah, that would get me. Like if for example in Batman Eternal we find out that his parents aren't dead, and that gets revealed in Arkham Manor, that would be a huge swerve, and that would be something. Oh man, they shouldn't have revealed that. But the level of swerve, the level of spoiler, I think we're getting some coolness in the story, and we're going to learn the final detail. Now we'll know the rest of the story when we go through Batman Eternal.
Yeah, here's the funny thing. I relate to his comments a lot, because normally I don't. I like to follow the story as it goes along. We talk about all the time. We do a spoiler warning on this show because we like to talk about the events after the fact, but we certainly don't want to take that experience away from anybody listening to this, because we like to have the conversation after the fact. Yeah. So that's why we warn people that, hey, we're going in depth on this. It's an interesting conundrum on this one, because it doesn't bother me either for this particular story, and I think it's because there's so much mystery left in Batman Eternal that I don't feel like I've been cheated the solving it. I want to see the ending of it. I'm still excited on how we're going to get there. There's too much like we don't know. They're doing a really good job of, like, Catwoman is a great example of a book. We talked about that last episode, where we know Catwoman's status quo after Batman Eternal. We don't know how she got there. What led her to that point. And I want to see that. So they got me, with those type of things, because they haven't revealed too much, which is interesting when you've already jumped to the end of the story. Yeah,
the journey is just as cool as the results sometimes. With a well-crafted story, you can tell me the ending, and I'll still be just as happy going through the process because of the story being told. Batman Eternal is doing just this absolute fabulous job with laying out what's going to happen. Like, you think about it, we had, before Batman Eternal the spoilers came out, before the first issue came out, we saw that Selina Kyle was going to be a mob boss, was going to be a crime boss, was going to be running Gotham. We saw that in the sneak preview issue that came out. So, but we're still loving the journey. We're still loving the process that shows her becoming, the boss, and just how she rises to power is the fascinating coolness of the issues.
And I think what ends up happening is you hit a certain point in time where your other titles have to start having fill-in issues. The part that I think is the most interesting is we don't know when Batman and Robin takes place.
Right.
In relation to Batman Eternal and what's going on. I can't wait to find out when that takes place and how that fits into all this. So I think we've gotten a lot of questions answered, but we've got so many on the table in the Bat universe in general right now that I think that's why it's still working. It works really well because it's a really complex universe. And I think Snyder's doing something those are very risky choices when you make them, but when you've got a story like this on the table, it just somehow works.
Yeah, especially because the quality of work, both writing, artwork, everything that we're getting from everybody on these titles, and it's keeping you there. It's keeping you right in the game. So, let's keep going. I'm excited for this stuff.
Yeah, and I think that's a sign. As long as they're not losing people, it's an interesting choice. I give them credit for making such an interesting choice.
Hey, Sean and Jim, this is Peter Rios calling. How are you guys? I haven't talked to you in a long, long time. I'm just reaching out to say hello and let you know that I'm still listening. And I wanted to talk about Gotham and Flash just really quick. I have two crazy speculations, but I just wanted to see what you thought about it. No real spoilers here, people, just crazy speculation. What if what's his name? Harrison Wells? Is that the name of the guy in the wheelchair? Everybody is assuming that he might be a Flash villain. What if he's Rip Hunter? What if he's, he's got the whole time angle thing going? What if he's Rip Hunter? He's the TV version of Rip Hunter, and he's trying to do things. He's trying to make sure the timeline is going in the right order as a way to create Flash and make sure everything comes out because of some future crisis. How cool would that be? Wild speculation, but, whatever. And for Gotham, not so much a speculation, but the character of Fish Mooney. Jeff Johns talking about how movie and TV can be all like this big multiverse. What if Fish Mooney is Gotham's version of the Eartha Kitt Catwoman? And she's trying to train a young woman. What if Gotham's version of the young Selena Kyle falls under the sway of Fish Mooney, and Fish Mooney acts like a mentor to her, and suddenly she can become kind of like a stand-in for the for the Eartha Kitt Catwoman. She won't take the name Catwoman, but in sort of spirit, it's kind of a throwback to the 60s TV show. So there you go, just some crazy speculation, some crazy non-referenced or non-supportive theories, but that's the fun part about all of this. All right, guys, hope you guys are doing well. Talk to you soon. Bye.
It's funny. I do think that there's character concepts, because they've done a cool thing on Gotham with putting in characters now, like Edward Nygma. How cool is it to see him in a different light, like in an earlier era? But, you've got Catwoman in the role. You got Fish Mooney where she's at. Penguin. I know we talked about the fact that he's one of those characters you can kind of do a little older. Fish Mooney is probably remains one of my favorite characters on the show. And I like that he's right. There is kind of an Eartha Kitt thing going on with her. I didn't think of it until I was like nodding as I was listening to his voice. And I'm like, oh yeah, I get the vibe from her off of that. Maybe that's why I like her so much. It's a modern day version of that type of character fitting in there. I'm sure they were heavily influenced by Batman and other media in some of their choices.
Oh, definitely. And actually maybe even the actress kind of took a little bit from that as well, because you think about it, she is one of those really, really good actresses who, she knows her craft. And it's, you think about just television, as a medium. In the past, it used to be that you wouldn't get your A-list celebrities. You wouldn't get your massive powerhouses doing, just a TV show. Well, now you're getting that. And not only that, you're getting that in a comic book TV show that... I could see her looking out there, and maybe these are decisions that she made. With like you, I was nodding my head as he was saying that, going, I can see kind of that influence, and that's a kind of a neat thing. I really do wonder if there's any consciousness behind that, or if this was just something that just happened, or if this is a bunch of comic book people sitting around going, hey, I wonder if this is the case, where we talk to somebody and like, no, it's not.
I wonder how far, when you do these series, you do like a story treatment. And I'm sure that they plan a certain distance ahead. I don't know what route they're going to go with some of this, or how far that they've thought through what they're going to do with the character. You mentioned Rip Hunter before. I think the time travel aspect of the Flash, I think, is going to get very, very interesting. The storyline that they seem to be doing in Flash, and I don't know if they're doing it verbatim or if they're going to pull in, like a different, like Arrow. Let's use Arrow as an example. They're doing some unique things with Ray Palmer. So could they be doing a Rip Hunter thing with the Flash? Cool. They're doing the Zoom storyline, which was Hunter Zolomon is the one that it seems to be that they're doing. There was a Flash, Reverse Flash-ish character who came back, and his whole goal was to make Flash into a better Flash. Might have been Wally. The idea was the character came back through time, and I've got to really go back and pull out the issues. But the premise of the character and everything the character was doing was he was causing horrible atrocities to the Flash to make him a better Flash. I don't know that it's as simple as it being verbatim that character, or if they're doing something like, Rip Hunter would be a great idea. I think one of the cool things about Flash is you have a lot of opportunity there with how many DC characters they're already pulling in to pull from a lot of the mythos. They announced recently, it was in one of the magazines or on websites or something like that, where there is a distinct separation between TV and films, and to the point where the actor that plays Stephen Amell, who plays Arrow, commented on it, and he didn't have any issue with it. He said, "I'm fine if we're separated from the movie universe." He was talking about how we do 23 quality episodes, and the body of work that you deliver there is so rich and meaty that he said, "I don't feel like it's negated by films or diminished by films." And I would agree with that. I think the stuff they're doing on television, I'm enjoying the television delivery of this. I mean, this is comic books, where it's serialized anyway. I actually like more of the immediate delivery and in larger. I'd rather get 23 hours of superheroes than 2. That's not saying I don't want the movies. I do. I don't mind that there's going to be a Flash movie, though, that's not going to have the guy who's on the television show. I don't have an issue with that. It's interesting to see where they're going with these particular programs. And do you have your ideas on where the Flash story is going changed at all since we've had discussions about it?
I don't know. I like the thought that it could possibly be Rip Hunter. I don't think it is. I'm thinking this is a villain, and this is the whole Professor Zoom angle. Mm-hmm. And now, whether it's the Professor Zoom who's trying to make Barry a better Flash, or whether it's the Professor Zoom that's trying to kill him, if this was somebody who's trying to kill him, then he's had plenty of opportunity to do that, and he never did. So, I don't know. I want to think that this guy, I was always thinking this guy was a villain, but lately I've been thinking he's had plenty of opportunity to do some serious damage to Barry. If he was an actual villain, he would have taken advantage of this. This maybe is somebody else coming back through the timeline to try to help Barry and try to help the Flash and help the future. Because you think about back to episode 1 where you had the newspaper that showed the Flash disappears at the end of the event. That's the Barry running, the end of Infinite Crisis, where he kept running and then and disappeared, and that's how they won. So is he coming back in time to prevent that from happening, or make sure that does actually happen? I still have questions about him, but I'm starting to lean towards he may be a good guy. So I guess my opinions are kind of changing on him.
There was Hunter Zolomon, who was Zoom. He came back as Zoom, and he was like a secondary version of like the Reverse Flash concept, and he was a Wally West villain. And the idea behind him was that West wasn't as good as Barry because of the fact that he'd never gone through the kind of tragedy that Barry had, so he was trying to kill Wally West's wife. And then he was doing horrible things in Wally West's world for the purpose of trying to make... Really, his goal was to try and improve the Flash to make him a better hero by being the ultimate villain that would make him a better hero. Professor Zoom Thawne, the Reverse Flash, actually went back through time and killed Barry's mother. So it's going to be... I'm very curious to see which version that they're doing, or if they're doing their own unique character and combining elements of those things, which leads to some of what Peter was saying. Is it, perhaps that they're using a Rip Hunter or something? I don't know. I think all bets are off with speculation on these shows right now because of the fact that they are deliberately trying to pull characters that we know and love from the DC universe, put them in unique spots while still touching on as much of the mythos as possible, but they're not beholden to it either. Ray Palmer's story is pretty unique with what they're doing with him and Arrow, but yet he still feels like Ray Palmer.
Oh, definitely. And it's weird because as you're talking about the different Zooms, I initially was 100% thinking this was the Zoom who came back, killed the mom, and is a bad guy. But I don't know. He's had a lot of opportunities to do some serious damage, and he hasn't taken advantage of them. So is he only planning on killing Barry at a certain time? Is there something with the timeline and whatnot? I don't know. Does he have to wait until he doesn't have the powers yet, so he has to wait until he gets the Speed Force before he can kill off Barry? And there's a lot of issues that he could either be a villain or he could be a good guy. He could be... I'm really liking Rip Hunter. I think that'd be awesome if they did that. Or if not calling him Rip Hunter, calling him, giving him a different name and giving him a different persona, but it's like the Rip Hunter type style with a time traveler trying to protect the timeline. So there's a lot they can do with this stuff.
Yeah, or having Rip Hunter come in and be an ally of Barry's would be very interesting in this as well. I'd love to see them play around more with time travel, but they got time for that. It's one of the interesting things about the show is they've got a lot of Flash lore that they can pull from. I love that it's clear that they're starting to put the rogues gradually together. That idea is really cool in the show. The idea that this professor caused the event that made Barry the Flash for the purpose of making Barry the Flash is interesting.
Yeah, and there's a lot of, again, does that lead to being a villain? If this is a future guy who's a villain of the Flash, why would he create the Flash? Why would he kill off Barry's mom if that was him traveling back in time? Or, I don't know. I don't know who he is yet. And I kind of like the fact that there's so many different stuff flying through my head because I know about the Flash. I know about these different characters, and I'm like, is this him? Is this that? Or are they going to do something different? I think that for me is the strength of the TV show, the strength of these alternate universes where they take a basic thing and they kind of tweak it, they kind of twist it. Arrow's prime example of that. We're seeing, the birth of these different characters. Grant, Wildcat Grant, we've seen him introduced into the story. We've seen League of Assassins, Ra's al Ghul, various other characters in the DC universe that they've had. Komodo, that's a great introduction of that character as well. There's some neat stuff that these TV shows can do, and I think for me that's the excitement because I've got friends who have never read the comic book who are liking the stories, and I'm liking the story, and then we'll have conversations, and it's usually, a lot of times it's hey, is this person around in the comic book? And that's a common question, especially with Gotham. People are constantly, what about this, so what about so-and-so, what about so, and they're throwing out different stuff, and Arrow's another one, where they're like, hey, what about this character? Is that, that person's been around. In the book, they're more like this. Oh, okay, and it's, so there's some neat stuff that happens, and I'm glad they're doing that. I'm glad they're not afraid to tweak and do what they want with the titles without completely altering and changing. They're not making things dramatically off kilter, but they are giving themselves the freedom of expression, freedom of artistry.
That's where Peter makes, I think, a really interesting point, because he talks about this idea that you've got lore that's in television and film for these characters. The 66 show is going to be coming out soon, this week, actually, on DVD and Blu-ray, remastered and all that kind of. I'm like so geeking out for this. It's really, for me, exciting. But that's got a rich history. And then you've got that movie era of Superman and Batman, and that's another lore. And the television shows, for Superman and Batman and, Superman's various television shows, I should say, cartoons. And so you can do winks and nods to those things. You can also do winks and nods to the comic books. You can do, pop culture references and things like that. You want to also keep in mind that you got to do that stuff judiciously. You've got to do it where you're explaining for complete newbies. Because if you make a show that's so reliant on that, you're going to alienate the casual person who's like, okay, I've never watched a Batman show, so I'm going to kick into Gotham. I think having nods to I agree with him that Fish Mooney, boy, I didn't, before this conversation, if you mentioned Eartha Kitt, I wouldn't have connected her with Fish Mooney. Now that he did that, I'm seeing it. I get the vibe that he's talking about there. And I like that kind of stuff. And I think that's where you do a wink and a nod. I think Eartha Kitt did an interesting job as Catwoman. It was a hard role to fill because you're following Julie Newmar, who was, I thought, pretty darn perfect. And Eartha Kitt, I thought, did a great job of making a unique Catwoman that still felt like it was somehow connected. So I don't know. I think it's going to be fun stuff going on with these series afterwards. And the Rip Hunter idea, I never even considered Rip Hunter being involved in Flash on some level. I feel like I should have, whether he's an ally or an enemy. Where do you take Ray Palmer and Arrow? Where do you think that character's going to go? And this isn't really a spoiler. We know he's on the show. Where do you think he's going to go? Because that's really our own speculation. It's got nothing from the...
Well, I'm thinking because he's doing heavy into the R&D. And he's doing heavy into the research and just that Queen consolidating and bringing back, Queen. So I'm thinking we're going to eventually see Adam. There's going to be something that he comes across, and just because of his brilliance and his genius, he's going to, come up with the shrinking technology. We've already seen the one notion that the one paperwork that he was going through had OMAC on it. It was a multiple, part of a military side of the Queen. So they're introducing concepts like that into the TV show. I think very easily we're going to see eventually him becoming the Atom.
I agree. I think that's something we will see from the character. I hope we see it, because I just think that'd be interesting to see him at least develop, maybe not become the Atom, just develop the shrinking technology, and somehow it plays into the show on some level. I got time for that, though. Brandon Routh, I think, is doing a great job.
Yeah, I like him. Again, I liked him when he was Superman. I thought he did a good job. He's a good actor. He's talented. He's got another guy that he's got the right look for the superhero role. He's really getting into that scientist geeky side of him, where it's you can see this he's embraced the role. It's not just I'm GQ slick smooth guy. No, he's the geek. He's the nerd. He's going into it, but he's not. They didn't put like the glasses on him or make him look wimpy, or they didn't physically change who he is, but he still has that mindset. He's got that that super intelligence mind where he's just constantly going, and it's he's awkward around people. He doesn't deal well with people, but he does have the qualities, and I do like this. It's weird seeing Ray not in the classroom setting and not being a professor and all that, because I'm so comfortable with that. I'm not comfortable. I'm not used to seeing him as a business guy. So it's when they first introduced it and the first thought, I was like, my head, I was thinking, this would have been kind of cool if that was Ted Cord instead of Ray Palmer. And it would have been Cord coming in to take over Queen and all that stuff. But I'm really embracing Ray Palmer and the fact that who he is and what they're doing with him.
Yeah. That's something that I'm really finding interesting with that character. Is I didn't expect Ray Palmer to be on that show in such a big role, and I think it's a really good use of him.
Now, when do you think, if at all, he figures out the whole secret?
I don't know. I don't want to see that quick, because I kind of like him being the nice guy that steps away. My question still remains in my head is, When's Ollie going to get back when and if is Ollie going to get back Queen Consolidated? Is that going to happen?
I think those two are connected. I think once Ray realizes who Ollie is, that's when the connection's going to come back, and that's when Ollie will get back Queen Consolidating. Because Ray will realize what he's doing and this is why this guy was so scatterbrained. This is why it wasn't that he was a bad business person. It was the fact that he was dealing with this higher power. He was dealing with this higher calling. He was saving lives. And Ray, being a good guy, is going to say, okay, here's what we're going to do to protect the future of Queen. And it's going to be there's going to be a Queen running, Queen Consolidating eventually, but it's going to be kind of like I see kind of a Lucius Fox thing going, where somebody that, Ollie trusts will actually be in charge, but it will be a Queen, calling the shots.
Cool. And actually, in our next segment, we'll jump to like a spoilery chat about some of the TV shows. We tried to stay basically away from that and just kind of keep it up to speculation. But I wanted to thank Peter for calling. Peter, you'll know from Comic Geek Speak, the Daily Rios. I love following him on Twitter because he usually has some cool discussions going on Twitter as well. But I'll put links to his Daily Rios podcast, obviously Comic Geek Speak, and of course his Twitter page, just so you can kind of follow Peter and everything that he's doing. We wouldn't actually have Raging Bullets if it wasn't for Peter Rios. He's been a very good friend since way back, over 8 years ago now, when the show first started, helping me get an idea of what kind of podcast I wanted to do. And he's always been so supportive of our show, shouting us out back in the day on Comic Geek Speak and helping point people in our direction. We've been very lucky as having what Comic Geek Speak did as role models as far as how to really embrace the community atmosphere of podcasting, because I'm a big believer in the fact that it's great to be able to shout each other out and help each other out, and instead of being competitive, this is supposed to be fun, and it remains that way because of the fact that shows like Comic Geek Speak paved the way for us. So thank you, Peter, for calling in. Always good to talk to you.
There it is, going into that tunnel.
Jim, I want to wrap up the show by just kind of talking casually about the events of Arrow and Constantine. These are going to get spoilery because we're up to the current week is actually November 8th right now when we're recording this segment. So if you haven't gotten current on those shows up to today, that's why I'm putting this as a separate segment. We want to get spoilery. We haven't talked Constantine at all, and the ending of Arrow this week needs to be discussed. So it was Roy?
Oh my God.
Who saw that coming?
It was funny because, before we recorded, Sean, hey, have you had a chance to watch it? And I hadn't had a chance. You want to watch it? Trust me. So whenever Sean gives me those words, I'm like, okay, I got to make sure I watch it. And I was like, I'm watching the episode going, this is a pretty cool episode. I like Felicity, getting some backstory. I was like, oh, that's kind of neat. I'm like, but the whole time I'm thinking, why did Sean tell me I have to watch this? Where is the, oh my God moment? That came right at those final scenes. Roy throwing arrows into, into Sarah. Holy crud. Did not see that coming.
But that's an aftermath of the drug, right?
It's got to be.
The Miraculu?
The Miraculu or something else. Maybe Vertigo did something. Or I don't know what it was or how it happened. But I love the fact that scenes for next week are him confessing this stuff and talking about this and trying to figure out what is going on. Did he actually do it? And unfortunately for Roy, I think he did. I think this isn't just I think he actually did it, which I hate to say that because I really like Roy and I love the character Sarah, even though her death is giving us Laurel as a Black Canary in the distant eventual future. But it is something huge that how do they deal with this? How do they get past this? How does Roy get past this?
Is this the addiction storyline, though?
It could be. He could be, because that was the thing I thought when they first, when Thea was saying, hey, Roy, you okay? You look peaked, and she's like, I'm just not sleeping. I was thinking, okay, he's still doing. Or he was having something with a Miraculu or, something. It was like where they're doing the addiction story. And that's what I was thinking this was going. I was not remotely thinking it was nightmares from him killing Sarah.
Yeah.
Or did he kill Sarah? I don't know. I guess we'll find out, but I'm guessing he did. And it's a mind control type thing that caused him to do this, because I don't think he would actually willfully kill her.
No, well, the fact that he didn't shoot the arrows, he threw the arrows.
Threw them, yeah.
That's the part that's got me thinking, we're on the drug of some sort. And I don't know if it's addiction or if it was, the after effects, or he still got some of that in his system, or what's going on with him. Because remember, when he was under the influence of that,
he was
out and didn't remember a lot of what was happening. So I'm going to be very curious to see where this story is going. I loved the whole Felicity storyline there. I guess I do want to talk about that a little bit with Mom, and because we got to see a flashback to Felicity's backstory and the fact that as a hacker, she created like the ultimate code, the one that would allow her to break in, get cash, do alter education records, do whatever she wanted to do. That's where her moral code kicked in.
The super virus.
yeah, and she backed off of that, and the boyfriend being alive and being the one behind it, I thought it was a great storyline. Seeing her on that and on Flash, I thought it was great to see. It's funny, she's probably one of the more well-developed characters going on in these programs now, because I find her, what she is? She's Chloe Sullivan.
Yeah.
And I don't mean that they're cookie cutter of each other. What I mean is Chloe became like this fan favorite character, like a breakout character from Smallville that people were clamoring to see in comics. And I don't think the comics ever really got her right.
No.
In the attempts to bring her in, except in the Smallville comic, which, is a direct. But I'm talking about when they tried to bring her into the DC universe proper, it just didn't work. This, with Felicity, I think I'm very curious to see if she can transition over to comics Felicity can transition over into comics the way that she's doing it on the television programs, because she is so awesome as a character. I really I root for her to wind up with Ollie.
Yeah.
Before I was rooting for Ollie to be with Black Canary.
Yeah. Oh God. Yeah. But it's funny because when I think back to some of our early discussions of Arrow, it was always thrown out there, what about between the two of them? And I was always like, I don't think so. I don't think they're going to go there. Now I'm sitting there cheering. I'm hoping these two get together. But you see, Felicity with Barry. You see potential sparks between her and Ray. You see all these different guys in her life, and you just want to yell at her, say, no, just embrace life. Go after these other guys that are interested in you. But she still does have that thing for Ollie. He still does have kind of a hold on her, even though she's starting to be her own person. And it's neat seeing her accept who she is and try to develop and go beyond, just being Girl Friday to Green Arrow. She is trying to be Felicity, but the worlds are constantly interchanging and interconnecting. And she's a character I'm rooting for constantly.
Yeah, I am too. And that's always part of the fun. It's rooting for these characters and finding them interesting. It's the importance of supporting cast. We talked about in the comics how we want the supporting cast. When we were talking about Trinity of Sin, we want to see the supporting cast stay in there. Dr. 13 we used as a reference. I'd like to see the same thing on these television shows. These supporting cast members are really important. I think comics and TV can both learn a lot from each other in the importance of strong character development that goes beyond just the main character. Because that's what makes you care about the main character. Yeah.
Now, do you think they're going to make Felicity's dad somebody? Or if are they going to leave that out there, you think? Because when we see her mom, and it's obvious she gets her super intelligence from the dad, not from the mom, and the mom even commented on that way when she was 6. When Felicity was 6 years old, she and her dad, she couldn't keep up with her and her dad, but the dad took off, and the dad's not in the picture, and it was the single mom who raised her. And it's, are they going to bring in who the dad is, or are they going to just leave it out there?
I don't know. It all depends on where they tend to go with it. They left an interesting opportunity there with the dad.
Yeah.
As far as dad ran out on them. So where did he go? Why did he go there? Is he going to be a good guy or a bad guy? That's never usually a good thing. But we know dad's super smart, too. I don't know. I don't know that. I don't trust that anything's a throwaway on that show.
Right. They mentioned it for a reason. They mentioned that the dad's super intelligent, like Felicity is, and that he took off when she was younger. So that can't just be a throwaway. I don't think they're going to make it like something obvious like Merlin or any of the characters. It's going to be a new character coming into the universe. But the question is, who is the new character? What is it? Who is it going to be? And I don't know. I'm like, I don't know, but I want them to tell me, but I got a feeling it's going to be, maybe another season before we find any of that stuff out. Maybe he'll be the next big bad villain after this season's done.
So, Constantine, you finally got to see it. And actually, when we first talked about this, you hadn't seen it yet.
Right.
So, what do you think?
Dude, I'm loving Constantine. With each episode, I'm getting more and more into it, and I'm liking it more and more. Part of things, I was really worried that they would make him too much of a hero. Because traditional television, especially the main networks, they want their heroes to be likable. They don't want them to be complete and total jerks that Constantine can be a lot of times. And it's that the jerkiness of Constantine that is something that being a lot of other people who read the book, that's what we like about this guy.
Yes.
That he is just a complete whatnot. But I like the fact that they're going with it's a good combo of there is a darkness to him, there is a bit of the jerk in him, but there is also a bit of the hero. There is a bit of light and darkness coming together.
I like that you just defined what a whatnot is.
Yeah. Well, I'm trying to watch my language.
Yeah. Well, I'll have to remember that's what it is.
Well, whatnot's so many things. Yeah. That's right now what whatnot is.
And you're the sensei of that, huh? All right. Okay.
Never thought of that one. Okay, you got me on that.
Yeah. Like sometimes you hand them to me. It's like,
that right there was a home run derby pitch.
I'm like, wow, he's giving me a gift there. Like, all right.
Nice.
I like Zed. I really liked that character has come into the show. I think the interesting part about her is she comes off initially as being a good guy, but there's the mystery behind her and the way we see her in the one episode where she's kind of watching him when he's sleeping. You don't know kind of what's her deal. Is she a good guy? Is she a bad guy? Does she have a dark secret that's going on behind her? In the world of Constantine, some of that stuff should really be ambiguous. Constantine's done some horrible things. He's trying to save his soul, but along the way, you've got to do horrible things to make that happen. He doesn't always do things for heroic reasons. Some things he does just to survive himself, which I think is great. The character, the guy they have playing, that Matt Ryan, I think is, oh my gosh, is that perfect casting. He just really gets how to play the character. I love Chaz, Zed. Papa Midnight on the most recent one I was so glad to see that character done so well. And the relationship between him and Constantine, where he hates Constantine, but yet because of their world, sometimes you got no choice but to team up together to solve a problem. He sort of saves Constantine's life, and at the same time, Constantine, has to escape from this dude as well, who's now out to get him. The burning of the voodoo doll or putting a curse on him, or whatever he did to him at the end of the episode, I thought was really great. But the casting of this show, I think, is really top notch.
Oh God, yeah, and it's got a wonderful body count. That was another thing I was worried about, is how many innocent people were going to die. And again, it's a weird statement for me to say, but I'm glad they do have innocent people dying in this, because it fits in the Constantine universe. It fits in this dark magic universe. You have to have these innocent people dying, and it's a sad thing to say, because it's never good that these people who are just like going through life and you're dead now. Wait, what? There's but you kind of need to have that darkness in this universe, and especially the talk of the price of magic. That every spell has a price, and there is always can be a cost behind doing magic, and it's part of it is your soul, part of it is your life, part of it is this. There's a lot of different craziness that's going to come from this, and I like seeing that kind of happen, and just that the magic starting to flesh more and more out.
Yeah. That part is really important, I think, for the show. The show has got a really different feel and flavor to the other comic book related properties that are on television right now, I think is really important. The fact that it's on Friday nights, I worry about. But I think the fact that it's on at night, it's on a later night show, helps them to kind of be a little more edgy with it, which the show needs. It's got a Vertigo edge to it, and it's just done really, really well. I do highly recommend to people watch a couple episodes of it, because I don't think you really get the full flavor for the show until, I thought the one with Papa Midnight, the last one, was just phenomenal. But I don't know that it would have had as much impact if I hadn't seen everything that came before. It just, I really feel like they've started to really flesh out these characters and define that it's not all, happy high-fiving, we won. It's a very, very dark world that they live in, and I quite like it.
Yeah. Now, Chaz, what do you think his deal is? Because he's been killed a couple times now, and he's still around.
Well, he's a character from the comics.
He is?
Oh, yeah. So you didn't read the Vertigo stuff?
I never read the Vertigo stuff.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I really don't want to say too much there.
Okay.
Because they seem to be pulling from... They're not 100% beholden to it, but they are, Papa Midnight, Chaz, all that kind of stuff. They're pulling from the comic lore. Zed, I don't know if Zed is a comic book character or not. I don't remember encountering Zed before, but I haven't read everything Constantine. But Chaz, I definitely remember. So I don't know. It's there's more to come with Chaz.
Oh yeah. Okay, cool. Because he was the one I was always wondering about what he was, and I've got my theories on it. And again, I haven't read Vertigo, so my guess is he's a golem. But again, that's just my opinion.
I'm not going to say anything.
No, don't say anything.
The reason why I'm not going to say anything is there's comic book storylines involving Chaz that I don't know if they're going to do, and I don't want to ruin them for you with you not having read the material.
Right.
And I don't know how much they're going to stick to that, or if they're going to do some original things as well. And I'm fine with either option with what they're delivering right now. I like Chaz being there. It's like
he's a cool character, and he's an actor. I've seen him in a couple different stuff that I'm like, he's got the right look for that universe. And because you talked about Constantine, that was a great casting because he fits that character, but he also fits in that universe. And it's Zed, when they first introduced her, I was like, okay, this is going to be another part. And, because that first episode, you had the girl in for one episode and she's gone. Then you get Zed. Is she in for one? No, she's going to be around for a little bit longer. But I don't see her staying around for the full season, though. Either something horrible happens to her or we find out who she is because she's hiding something. And I'm leaning towards she's a good guy, but I can't say that for certain because of the Constantine universe. But just something tells me we're going to find out when we find out her secret, it's that she's a good guy and she's trying to help Constantine in the fight.
So far, it looks like she's around for 7. Like Constantine on IMDb, they got him for 8 episodes. They got her for 7.
Well, that's the full run. That's the full run with him. So.
Yeah. So her story is a larger arc, and I want to see how that all plays out. We've got to talk about that show at the end of the season, and if they haven't revealed stuff about Chaz, we'll talk more about Chaz's role in comics and compare, just because I know you haven't read it, but we should follow up on that, but let's do that towards the end of the season, just cause that way you can see how it develops, and we can talk about how it compares to the comics.
Yeah. And we go off air. We talked about just the Helm of Fate.
Oh, that was awesome!
They had it in there, man.
Yeah, and what a great version! Like you wanted to pick that up and put that on, didn't you?
Oh God, yeah. I so wanted to put that thing on, and it has me. I want to see them go to the Oblivion Bar. And I just every time he talk about a pint or something, anytime Constantine makes some reference to a bar, I want to see him walk into the Oblivion Bar, do some weird knocking on a mystic door, open it up, and it's the bar. And just like the House of Mystery, his house that he's in right now, the mill that he's in, I keep wanting to call it the House of Mystery because I want. But then when they opened up and it was bigger on the inside and there's a lot of different rooms and all the craziness that's going on with the house, I'm like, yes, okay, we got some magic going on here.
Well, that hallway, that one that they opened up, where Constantine's like, I've never gone in there yet.
I'm not ready to go down there yet.
That stuff was great. I really enjoyed that, because it adds more things to look forward to in the show. It just shows that they have a longer reach plan to it, which is something that I want to see. I want to see that from all the comic book shows. I'm loving it with Marvel Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. These are all shows that you have the potential to go on a number of years with these programs and really deliver new content. So it'd be crazy not to do that. I do recommend, though, if you've never watched Constantine, if you're never interested in the character, it's a good show to watch. It's really well done. And encourage friends of yours with any of the comic book shows who might like the genre of the particular program to give it a shot. I'm amazed. My dad and my brother both really enjoy Gotham. If you'd told me I would have said that a year ago, I would have laughed at you. So it's great that these shows are catering themselves to a larger audience. I think it's just a way to get a real awareness of the properties out there that maybe there are misunderstandings as far as what they were before, which I think is neat. I'm just glad to see more of, for us, it's great as fans.
Has me encouraged for iZombie, whenever that comes out. And it's just anytime now when I see that they can do some of this stuff and they're doing it well, I'm like, you know what? Okay, maybe they know what they're doing. Maybe we're going to get some good stuff from them.
And Supergirl.
It's Supergirl, too, yeah.
Yeah, I'm excited for both of those.
Spinning with great speed, the Flash creates a protective vacuum around himself.
Want to shout out our show voicemail line. It's 1-440-388-4434 or drnorge on Skype. We love having you a part of our show. Want to shout out our show website, which is ragingbullets.com. That's where you get updates on what's going on with the podcast and when our release is going to be. I also want to shout out we are available on Facebook. They actually we had a Facebook page, and we had to turn it into a page for the podcast, one of those fan pages type of things, because I think Facebook's restructuring some of those pages, so we ended up converting that over. But more important than that, even, we have a Facebook group that we are part of, and you're going to want to check out our Facebook group because it's a wonderful community of podcasters and fans of the show and fans of comics and pop culture in general. We have friends on there that are doing Google Hangouts constantly just to chat about comics and the television programs and everything. I know just tonight there's one that's going to be going on just talking about pop culture and media and all that. They talk about the releases of upcoming releases of books, and it's just a wonderful community. It's a safe community. It's people who are fans like you. If you haven't done a Facebook group and you always shied away from that, this is really a community that you want to be a part of. And consider joining up and being a part of that group. And thank you for all the quality people that are constantly posting in there. I just love going in there. I'll be, sometimes sitting at home and I'll just go through and browse through and read some of the great content that's being put up there by awesome people. So I just wanted to shout that one out. We also have a Twitter that actually is fed by our show Facebook page. So I want to thank everyone who participates on there. We actually had a friend recently on Twitter who announced that they put a Stitcher review up there for us, which is another way to receive podcasts. So thank you for doing that. As they said, it was the first one we got up there. And I greatly appreciate that. Whether you retweet about our podcast or shout us out on websites or on Stitcher or wherever, or on iTunes reviews and things, we really appreciate that. That we don't have, and no podcast does, and I would encourage you to do this for any podcast that you listen to. No podcast really has an advertising budget, so to speak. We rely heavily on listener feedback and you guys helping us out by getting the word out and just letting one person know. If everybody listening does that, it's just a tremendous help. So thank you so much. I know it's extra time out of your schedule to do things like that, but it's always appreciated when you do. We don't get to shout it out enough, but thank you much. We have pages on Google Plus as well, and as well as I have a personal Facebook page and a personal Google Plus page, and you have a personal Facebook page, so feel free to add us. We love chatting with you guys about the podcast. Sponsoring this episode, once again, dcbservice.com and instocktrades.com. Check out Effigy number 1, $2.99 regularly, 50% off, only $1.49. Remember, they are a digital partner, whether you do My Digital Comics or Comixology. 5% of those purchases goes towards your DCB service orders. So remember to start stacking that up and saving that money. It does help. It adds up very quickly. Over at instocktrades.com, speaking of 2%, they have a 2% that you can earn extra off of your orders, as long as you order within 8 days. That's going to be coming. There's going to be a new banner that's going to be going up on their site with more information about that. So be sure to check that out. So, if you order something 40% off the first week, and then let's say 8 days later, you're like, ooh, I got 2 other books that I want to order. you get an extra 2% off. So that sounds like a small amount, but when you start adding that up, especially if you like to buy trade paperbacks and hardcovers as much as we do, that adds up quickly. So definitely check out InStockTrades.com for that amazing deal. And I want to thank DCB Service and InStockTrades.com for supporting us and other podcasts. Consider going to our show website and clicking on the links there and checking out what you can get from both of those websites. Our next episode, Jim, we're going to continue taking a look at some of the current comic events. There's 2 books in particular we're definitely going to talk about. I want to talk about Star-Spangled War Stories, and we also want to talk about Infinity Man and the Forever People. But throughout the week, Jim and I are going to be trading notes back and forth and just talking about some of the other current comic events that are going on, because there's so much going on at DC that we want to discuss. So we will see you next week.
Bye!
On November 13th, Sean Whalen was asked to stop constantly talking about comic books. That request came from his wife. Deep down, he knew she was right, but he also knew that someday he would find someone that would talk to him. With nowhere else to go, he appeared at the home of his childhood friend Jim Segulin. Sometime earlier, Segulin's boss had requested that he shut up about his comic books and never speak of them again. Can 2 grown men put out a DC Comics podcast without driving each other crazy? It's Raging Bullets, the DC Comics fan podcast. With Sean Whalen as Dr. Norge, and Jim Segulin as the Sensei of the Whatnot and the Duke of You-Know. It's a spoiler podcast, so they will go in depth into the plot line, story twists, and whatnot of the comics they are reviewing. So if you haven't read the books, you may want to come back later so you may better enjoy the show.